Our story begins with the boss introducing a new company intern named Mike to the team. Having recently graduated from college, the protagonist sincerely believed that hard work would definitely bear fruit and that he would soon become rich. However, just a week later, reality showed itself to be completely different. The guy was already staying at work until late at night and was increasingly resembling a slave. The weight of reality and despair convinced him that all his efforts would not help him escape poverty. Completely exhausted, the young man thought only about how good it would be if the world ceased to exist right now. Moreover, he didn't even see the point in going to bed, since he understood that the next day he would be mercilessly exploited again. Then Mike only wished for the world to be destroyed by aliens and for his suffering to finally end. Suddenly, a strange sound echoed throughout the room, and someone's voice announced that the ideal life system had been activated. A full status window appeared in front of Mike, displaying his name, stats, and a message from the ideal life system. Mike was completely confused by what was happening, but quickly became inspired when he realized that he had his own system. Then the hero mentally sent both the overtime and his boss far away. Overjoyed, he threw everything nearby into the air, realizing that he would never have to work again. However, at that very moment, a powerful explosion thundered outside. Looking out the window, the main character realized that the gas pipeline had exploded. The explosion plunged the street into complete chaos. To the hero's great horror, there were zombies everywhere. They attacked people and destroyed everything in their path. The guy watched what was happening in complete bewilderment. Then he quickly pulled the curtains to hide. Mike turned to the system and asked what it was called, since everything that was happening did not look like an ideal life at all. In response, the screen confirmed that this was indeed a system of ideal life. But the hero noted that it all looked more like the end of the world. Despite all the chaos going on around him, the guy tried to stay calm. But then, a woman suddenly crashed right into the door, the loud sound making Mike turn around to see what had happened. It turned out that the zombie girl was banging on the glass door non-stop, and then Mike realized that her face seemed familiar to him. He remembered that he had seen this woman in the elevator before, and even considered her attractive. However, now her appearance has completely changed, and the girl herself has turned into a terrifying monster. Seeing her current state, the guy decided to forget everything he had previously thought about her beauty. Immediately after this, the system issued a new task: to flirt with a woman and arrange the perfect date. This assignment left the hero speechless. After that, Mike started looking around the office for something useful. He collected some supplies and grabbed a container of water. Mike came to the conclusion that simply doing nothing was pointless. Since he already had a task, the young man decided to accept the challenge. Having made his decision, the hero walked up to the door and unlocked it. As soon as the door opened, the zombie lost her balance and fell. While the girl was trying to get up, Mike approached her, introduced himself, and offered to become friends. Having received no answer, the guy felt a little awkward and said that he would take her silence as consent. Immediately after this, the protagonist rushed back into the office and hastily slammed the door, leaving the zombies in complete confusion. The creature sat down on the floor, trying to comprehend what had happened. However, the girl soon returned to her usual zombie behavior. In a rage, she began banging her head against the glass door. Then Mike wondered if this could be considered the beginning of a conversation. Suddenly, the system criticized his terrible attempt at flirting, which surprised the hero, as he learned that tasks have a grading system. Despite the poor result, the guy still received 1 attribute point and 10 favor points from the zombies. He also found out that her name was Chelsea, and at first Mike thought the reward was useless. However, he then suggested that if the girl's favor was high, she might stop trying to eat him. The system explained that as attachment grew, the target would feel an increasing desire to be near and would become submissive. The last part of the explanation puzzled the hero. He wondered whether he had gained the ability to control zombies, or had simply acquired a zombie girlfriend. Frustrated by the lack of information, the boy complained that the system didn't even have a tutorial, so Mike decided to figure it out on his own and ordered the system to invest the received attribute point into strength. After making his decision, he felt a new sensation spread throughout his body. Then the hero was enveloped in a blue glow, and he felt much stronger. Then the guy declared that he was now ready for the apocalypse. In the world after the end of civilization, characteristics such as spirit, physique, and agility were crucial for survival. However, for Mike at that moment, there was nothing more important than brute physical force. After investing a point in strength, He felt an indescribable flow of power passing through his entire body. Having collected the few supplies he found in the office, the young man realized that without outside help, the food would run out very soon. It was at this moment that the system activated a new task. The hero needed to report to work in 17 minutes. The reward for completing the task was 5 stat points and a chance to attract the boss's attention. However, the marking device was outside, meaning he needed to get past a zombie named Chelsea to complete the mission. Watching the girl through the door, the guy noticed that her desire to pounce on him seemed to have weakened. At the same moment, the system screen showed his 2 current tasks: check in at work and flirt with a woman. Having received this information, the protagonist came up with what he thought was a brilliant plan to complete both tasks at the same time. He reasoned that the most dangerous feature of the zombie was infection, and as long as he wasn't scratched, there would be no serious danger. Then Mike took the scissors and began to prepare for the mission. Using paper and duct tape, the hero constructed improvised armor and a spear. At the same time, he was confident that the system of an ideal life would not issue impossible tasks. Finally, fully equipped, the guy opened the office door. As soon as Mike walked out of the office, he was immediately confronted with a hallway filled with zombies, all of whom turned at once and stared at him. However, the guy did not hesitate. He confidently walked towards Chelsea and declared his feelings, after which he asked the girl to date him. The hero then added that he had neither a car nor a house, but he was willing to work hard, and so he invited her to dinner on Thursday. While dodging the attacks, Mike thought that using corny romantic phrases might earn him extra points. However, the system labeled him a loser for being rude and talkative, resulting in Chelsea's favorability being reduced by 10 points. After this, the zombie seemed to come to her senses and looked at the guy with obvious contempt. Seeing the girl's unexpected reaction, the main character became very embarrassed and began to sweat. Meanwhile, in the next room, 2 men were watching what was happening. One of them asked if the voice really belonged to Mike. The second one was puzzled as to what exactly the guy was doing, since he was confessing his feelings to Chelsea, who had previously been caught by the manager. Shocked by what he saw, one of the men declared that Mike had completely lost his mind and admitted that he had always thought he was a little strange. However, the most surprising thing for them was that the girl did not attack him at all. Seeing an opportunity to take advantage of the situation, the manager decided to call Mike over and asked the man to make some noise to get his attention. Meanwhile, the main character had successfully checked in at work and was about to return to the office. As he passed other rooms, he noticed that there were zombies there too. Then the guy thought with irony that literally all the employees had turned into workhorses. At that moment, the system notified him that the task had been completed 3 minutes ahead of schedule, and his grade was on par with that of an ordinary person. As a reward, he received 5 attribute points. But Mike didn't care at all, since the world was already plunging into an apocalypse. Mike soon came to the conclusion that, despite Chelsea's lack of aggression, there were still many other zombies left in the building. So he decided to return to the office, however. When the hero was about to leave, he heard someone call his name. Manager Jack appeared next door and asked Mike to somehow get Chelsea away. The protagonist immediately recognized the manager and was surprised by such a sudden change in attitude and why he was in the neighboring office at all. However, the guy reasoned that in the conditions of the apocalypse, more people meant more power, so he agreed to help. The manager opened the door with a smile on his face, allowing Mike to approach. However, as soon as the hero came closer, the man abruptly slammed the door right in front of his nose. Afterwards, the boss thanked him for the distraction and promised him a promotion once the crisis was over, leaving the guy outside with the zombies. However, to the great surprise of everyone present, Chelsea never attacked Mike. Hearing the manager's words, the guy just grinned and noted that he turned out to be a real comedian. At this point, the system congratulated the hero on attracting the attention of his superiors, and then reminded him never to go against his boss. After this, Mike wished the manager good morning and suggested that everyone return to work in the office. These words frightened the 2 men so much that they were completely at a loss. Both began to wonder if Mike had truly lost his mind. In desperation, they tried to lock the door and moved furniture against it to block the passage. The manager hurried his colleague and demanded that he move faster. However, the main character kicked down the door with one powerful kick, and the manager fell to the floor from the force of the blow. Mike then said good morning to his colleagues with a sinister smile. The man who wanted to deceive him immediately began to justify himself, and said that he could explain everything. And then suddenly he announced that he was heading to work. And after that, he said goodbye. Both men were left completely bewildered as they watched the boy calmly walk away. After the hero left the office, Chelsea followed him and began to slowly approach him. However, the girl then noticed two men in the room. Sensing human flesh, she instantly rushed towards them. Literally a moment later, Chelsea found herself in an office where there were two men. As soon as she was inside the building, the protagonist heard desperate cries for help. Then he calmly closed the door and locked it, leaving both men alone with the zombie. The system then praised Mike for his actions and completed the task with a perfect grade. As a reward, he received a letter of recommendation and 5 more points of professional experience. However, at the same time, his relationship with his boss and colleagues deteriorated. In addition, the hero unlocked a secret achievement called Generation Z Brings Order to Work. The reward for this was 5,000 in cash, and the system even offered to spend this money on a barbecue with colleagues. Mike found it extremely ironic to receive the money in the midst of the apocalypse, but he decided to save the reward for later. The guy then opened his email and found the letter of recommendation he had earned. This document allowed him to choose a new profession, which immediately inspired the hero. He began to imagine himself becoming a warrior or a magician. Delighted by this opportunity, Mike immediately confirmed the use of the letter. However, the result was completely unexpected. The resulting profession was that of a leaflet distributor. This outcome left the guy extremely disappointed. He wondered how he was supposed to hand out flyers during a zombie apocalypse. Despite the absurdity of his new profession, the hero still admitted that the system's capabilities were truly amazing. After that, he wondered what exactly he was supposed to advertise. The first option was for a swimming academy, the second for a law firm, and the third for a real estate agency. Without much thought, Mike chose the swimming academy assignment because it required less effort and provided more experience. The system immediately reproached him for trying to choose the easiest path, but the hero didn't care at all. Then a notification appeared stating that each new profession level would bring stat points and special skills. After some thought, the guy admitted that, despite the absurdity of the situation, the system was right about the need to start from the very bottom. Based on this, he decided that increasing his characteristics would help him survive the apocalypse and one day see the restoration of civilization. After the final selection of the task, the hero received a whole stack of leaflets. In the hallway, Mike met Chelsea again. The girl looked at him with obvious contempt. Moreover, her favor towards him sharply decreased. The guy tried to talk to her, but each new attempt only further decreased the sympathy indicator. Watching his favor plummet, the protagonist began to panic. He thought that if Chelsea knew him better, she would certainly see in him a positive and goal-oriented person. After this, the hero decided to act more friendly. He approached the girl with a smile on his face, but the indicator continued to decrease. Suddenly, he heard cries for help, and it turned out that the manager and his colleague were already turning into zombies. Mike approached them and stated that they had tried to harm him first, so they should not have had a bad opinion of him. With a sinister smile on his face, Mike took the swimming academy flyers and began handing them out to the two men who were already turning into zombies. Although they did not react to his actions in any way, the guy continued to simply throw leaflets in their direction. However, the system soon reprimanded the hero for throwing advertising materials literally at the feet of customers. The protagonist then wondered why these two were even trying to harm him. After this, he decided not to return to this topic anymore. Moreover, the guy said that even after death they would not get to a better place, and therefore he would help them find a new job. The hero then added that to do this work, they would definitely need legs. He then announced that he was taking both of them to clean the building. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a woman was checking the news on her phone. She soon learned from the news that there was complete chaos everywhere due to a zombie apocalypse. The girl cried desperately and could not understand why the world had become like this. Then she began to beg someone for help and protection. However, suddenly she heard the sound of a loud blow on the door. The frightened woman immediately realized that the zombies had come for her. At that moment, a loud voice was heard from outside, and it turned out to be Mike. The guy offered swimming and fitness classes to zombies, while simultaneously asking whether they could be considered quality clients. Hearing this, the girl was completely confused. She wondered in horror what exactly was meant by quality clients. Meanwhile, she prepared to open the door, realizing that these were clearly not zombies. Outside, Mike continued handing out leaflets. When the woman saw what was happening with her own eyes, her fear became even stronger. At this time, Mike explained to the zombies that his club was specially created for office zombies. He then tried to convince them that being able to swim would make them more competitive. In addition, the guy offered them a free trial lesson. Watching this picture, the girl became completely confused and even began to doubt her own eyesight. She started crying and saying that she was definitely hallucinating. Just in case, she typed out one last message on her phone, assuming that she might not survive the day. In the message, the woman described seeing a man selling gym memberships to zombies. Meanwhile, the protagonist came to the conclusion that his two current zombies had completely ceased to be useful. So he ordered his corporate zombie slaves to follow him, along with his new guide dogs. Thanks to this, the guy could now explore the building much more safely. Mike then explained that in gaming terms, this approach was called positioning. After some time, the hero decided to take a break. By that time, he had already distributed over 200 leaflets, so he thought it wise to take a short break before continuing his work. After this, the guy opened the system screen, which displayed the current progress, and also gave the opportunity to increase the profession level. And then Mike decided to develop his promising career as a leaflet distributor. Soon, the system confirmed the successful promotion, and the hero reached the first level of the profession. The guy received bonuses that increased resistance to extreme weather conditions and increased movement speed. Moreover, he discovered a new ability called reading people. This ability allowed him to see the profession and level of the target. After this, the hero relaxed in his chair, pleased with his own progress. However, the noise of chaos outside the building quickly reminded him of the harsh reality. Helicopters continued to fly over the city, and explosions occurred literally everywhere. The guy then calculated that there were enough zombies inside the building to complete the task, so he didn't need to go outside. Deciding to test the new ability, Mike analyzed one of the zombies and saw that its favorability stat was -100. This greatly disappointed the hero, since even after this peculiar walk, the attitude towards him remained extremely negative. Then the guy decided that it was useless to talk to them. However, almost immediately he remembered that he had not yet handed them the leaflets. Suddenly, a new idea appeared in his head. With a sly smile, Mike announced that there was a 20% discount for friends. Immediately after this, the hero began throwing leaflets at the zombies. Suddenly, one of the dead men who had previously been near the manager tried to attack him. However, the guy stopped the enemy without much effort using a spear. The zombie collapsed to the ground and completely lost the ability to resist. After this, Mike left the leaflet directly on the body of the defeated enemy. Then the hero noticed that new zombies had appeared nearby. Using his ability to read people, he discovered a strange feature. The new dead had no favorability indicator. The guy came to the conclusion that only Chelsea and the manager had favor levels, since they were linked to the system's tasks. After this, Mike turned to his zombie companions and asked if the world around them seemed abnormal to them. Then he tried to push them, but the zombies did not react to his words and actions. Then the main character concluded that he was the only normal person left here. After this, the guy asked his companions not to hate him so much. Then he untied the ropes with which the zombies were tied. Filled with determination, the hero prepared to continue distributing leaflets. However, at that moment, a new task appeared, and the system reported that the lunch break was over. Now Mike needed to go to the 11th floor to negotiate with a manager named Axel. Seeing the new task, the guy smiled contentedly. And at that moment, the elevator arrived on their floor. The hero approached the cabin and decided to take his zombie companions with him. He was apprehensive about meeting with his boss alone, so he found having friendly and harmonious colleagues to be a great support. After this, the group headed towards their target, the zombies quickly moving along the corridor on an improvised leash, dragging their master along with them. Along the way, he motivated his companions by stating that hard work required a fearless and indomitable spirit. However, suddenly, around the next turn, they encountered a whole horde of zombies, which completely blocked the path. Then the protagonist ordered the crowd to clear the way and demanded that they let him go ahead. The guy then used Chelsea and the former manager as a vanguard, sending them to fight against the rest of the undead. The zombie manager unexpectedly proved to be a very effective fighter and furiously attacked surrounding enemies. However, soon a much stronger zombie appeared before them, whose appearance was noticeably different from the others. Without wasting any time, Mike rushed into the attack with his spear at the ready. The battle quickly became much more intense, and the hero had to confront several enemies at once. At some point, a blonde zombie tried to attack him. However, With a precise blow, the guy instantly dealt with his opponent. He dealt with the rest of the monsters quite quickly. After an intense battle, the entire corridor was littered with the bodies of defeated zombies. Finally, the protagonist reached his goal, the 11th floor. Then the boy prepared himself for what awaited him ahead. Having reached the office of the director Axel, the hero encountered the last zombie on his way and dealt with it without difficulty. Meanwhile, his zombie companions watched from afar, looking completely terrified. Afterwards, Mike stepped into a puddle of mud and asked if Leader Axel was still there. The guy introduced himself as a Jianglin Tech employee named Mike and said he had been sent to discuss a parking issue. After this, the hero asked with a smile where the leader was, since they had a meeting planned. Soon, the system congratulated him on his ferocity and informed him that he had managed to intimidate the employees of Wangxiang International. The task was completed with a perfect score, and the guy received a large sum of money, experience, and additional stat points as a reward. After completing the mission, Mike decided to take the opportunity to collect all the useful resources located on the 11th floor. Then the hero took out a rope. But this rope was intended for a very unusual purpose. The guy tied up his zombies in a rather strange way so that they couldn't escape. Looking at his watch, Mike was surprised to discover that it was only 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The guy then noted that the work had brainwashed him so much that even during the end of the world, he continued to think about the end of the working day. To relax a little, the hero opened the bottle of soda. He sat down in a chair and began to collect his thoughts, simultaneously thinking through his next steps. The protagonist then carefully analyzed the situation and came to the conclusion that the virus appeared out of nowhere. As a result, the guy suggested that everything that was happening could have been a pre-planned global attack. Therefore, he decided that his main task was to improve his own combat capabilities. Having come to this conclusion, Mike decided to use the received attribute point and ordered the system to invest it into strength. The screen showed that he had accumulated enough experience to level up in both professions at once. Mike wondered what characteristic the office clerk was improving, since his job as a leaflet distributor had previously increased his dexterity. Without thinking too much, the protagonist invested all his efforts into the office worker profession and confirmed his choice, wanting to see the results. After leveling up, the hero received 2 points of spirit and half a point of constitution. In addition, he received a skill called idleness. The system explained that the ability was passive and reduced the frequency with which the manager paid attention to the employee. The guy immediately became interested in this skill and realized that it would increase his safety while gathering resources with 2 zombie colleagues. However, a new daily task was soon activated that required diligent work. Realizing that he would have to work even during the end of the world, Mike became despondent and complained about the excessive greed of the system. Nevertheless, the hero resigned himself to the situation, turned on the computer, and decided to get to work. Having sat down at the table, the guy began to type with an extremely tired look. After some time, the system notified him of the end of the working day and informed him that he had received a reward for his conscientious work. Feeling a huge sense of relief, Mike stretched out in his chair and celebrated the end of this torturous day. After this, he approached the time-tracking terminal and officially ended his shift. Returning to his desk, the hero discovered a whole stack of cash. The hero immediately began to think about what benefit they could bring in the conditions of the apocalypse. The system then explained that the money was used to participate in special drawings with guaranteed valuable prizes. Hearing this, Mike noticeably perked up and immediately decided to take advantage of the new opportunity. He chose the option of 10 draws in a row. As a result, the guy received instant noodles, mineral water, a business suit, and the talent of a bodyguard. He was especially interested in the last item, so the hero decided to find out what exactly the bodyguard's talent was. The description stated that after using the item, an experienced bodyguard would appear within a 3-kilometer radius. However, Mike quickly realized that this talent did not guarantee the loyalty of such a bodyguard. Despite this, the guy still decided to use the item in the hopes of getting a truly valuable specialist. The hero began to think about whether he should create his own company to receive new tasks. Within a few minutes, Mike was happily eating instant noodles. Then he decided that if he was going to do something, he should do it beautifully. In his imagination, the guy already saw himself as a successful leader who smoked a cigar and drank expensive wine. Satisfied with himself, the hero felt completely prepared for any future challenges. However, a new system notification suddenly appeared. The system reported that unauthorized persons had entered the building. Almost immediately, a new task was activated, the purpose of which was to protect the company's property. With a sly smile, Mike stated that the company was his home, so he would not allow anyone to steal his things. Meanwhile, in another part of the building, a man in a hockey mask was dealing with several zombies. He complained that that idiot Helga had attracted too many dead people with her screams, and the other man asked what they should do next. A man named Matt replied that they needed to search for supplies inside the building since they had already lost all of their belongings. After this, Matt ordered his partner to go forward, saying that he himself would cover his back. Although his companion was suspicious of these words, he nevertheless obeyed. As the second man started up the stairs, Matt quietly pulled out a knife. However, the fair-haired guy suddenly stopped after hearing some sound, and his partner then asked the reason for the stop. In response, the blonde explained that he heard footsteps and was afraid that there might be zombies nearby. However, Matt stated that it was most likely about the surviving people who were in the building. The fair-haired man hesitantly agreed and continued climbing up. Then he carefully peered into the crack and immediately shuddered in surprise. At that moment, Mike suddenly appeared behind him and greeted the stranger. Out of fear, the man lost his balance and fell backwards. After this, Matt asked how many people were on the floor and whether they had food. With a smile, the hero replied that the company was private property, and the security guard should have stopped the trespassers at the entrance. The guy then complained that he would have to file a complaint against the security company. Mike warned the intruders that trespassing was illegal. Moreover, the hero threatened to call a lawyer. Both intruders froze in fear and confusion at the same time. Then Matt looked at the guy with displeasure and stated that he had absolutely no idea what was happening outside the building. Tired of talking, the man moved forward with a baseball bat in his hands. In response, Mike sighed heavily and prepared to demonstrate his own capabilities. Since he could no longer count on protection, the hero called on his zombie companions to join the battle. Meanwhile, the blonde shouted for Matt to attack first since there were more people on the floor. Soon, Mike and the two intruders stood facing each other, preparing to fight. Suddenly, the fair-haired man threw a knife towards the hero. However, the guy easily dodged the attack and immediately went on the offensive. With one powerful blow, Mike sent his opponent to the floor. After this, the main character, with a grim smile, twirled a wrench in his hand and declared that he himself was the embodiment of heavenly retribution. Meanwhile, Matt grabbed two baseball bats at once and prepared for battle. Although the man recognized Mike's abilities, he was not intimidated, so he prepared to attack. And then the hero announced that he had previously treated the wrench with iodine for disinfection, despite the fact that he was planning to use it in a fight. The guy then moved forward with his zombie companions and declared that the intruder was asking for trouble. Mike also noted that he finally got the chance to say the phrase he had always wanted to say. After this, he prepared to continue the battle. However, Matt was very scared when he saw the zombies approaching. Meanwhile, the hero headed towards the already defeated blonde. The fair-haired man instantly panicked, broke out in sweat, and started calling his brother for help. He then rushed down the stairs, trying to escape. However, Mike stopped both men and stated that they couldn't just leave. They had to be held accountable for their actions. After that, the guy pointed at them and ordered his zombie companions to attack. However, the zombies didn't even move, and realizing this, the main character felt awkward. Mike soon came to the conclusion that his companions were so disgusted by him that they did not even want to approach him. Meanwhile, Matt grabbed the blonde man by the arm, stopped him, and started asking questions. The man then asked why the zombies didn't attack Mike at all. At this time, the main character slowly began to climb the stairs. Both intruders watched as Mike and his zombie companions slowly approached them. Meanwhile, the hero announced that he was a public activist on company security issues. The blonde guy asked his partner in confusion what they should do next. Then Matt ordered him to attack the zombies. However, the blonde flatly refused, as he was too scared. And then Matt suggested jumping from the third floor and thus saving themselves. The blonde man looked out the window and saw that the street was literally filled with zombies. So he said that jumping would only attract more dead people and make the situation worse. Realizing that he had few options left, Matt decided not to retreat any longer and prepared to fight to the very end. Immediately after this, the man lunged at Mike, in response to which the protagonist warned that everything that happened next would be considered self-defense. Seeing the danger to his owner, Manager Jack moved forward to protect Mike. However, the man was not afraid and dealt a powerful blow to the zombie's head. Despite the force of the attack, the creature did not react to the pain. What he saw shocked Matt so much that he was momentarily confused, and Mike took advantage of this to throw his wrench. The tool collided with Matt's baseball bat, the force of the impact throwing the man off balance and sending him crashing to the floor. Seeing the zombie approaching, Matt resigned himself to his fate as the creature mercilessly attacked him. Meanwhile, the hero calmly cleaned his ear and reminded the uninvited guests that he had previously warned them not to trespass on private property. Mike then noted with displeasure that now he would have to clean up all this mess. After this, the hero turned his gaze to the blonde and warned him that if he attempted to escape, Manager Jack would definitely follow him. Hearing the threat, the young man became completely frightened and broke out in a cold sweat. Huddled in a corner, the boy complained that a community safety activist was using zombies to beat people. Meanwhile, Mike looked at his dirty tool and came to the conclusion that he might have gone a little overboard with his self-defense. The hero then stepped over Matt's body and, with obvious sarcasm, stated that he was going to call an ambulance. After this, the protagonist told the blonde man to call the police, and he himself allegedly intended to contact his defense lawyer. Holding the phone in his hand, Mike began to hurry the man and asked if he had accidentally gone deaf. The frightened guy quickly picked up the phone and actually started calling, while he was sure that Mike was not a normal person. The man then began to apologize and shift all responsibility onto Matt, claiming that he acted solely under duress. Hearing this, the hero wondered what the point of laws would be if a simple apology could solve absolutely all problems. However, Mike stated that he was too lazy to deal with the man, so he ordered him to get out of sight immediately. After this, he suggested that the offender jump from the 3rd floor, since such a jump was not expected to be fatal. Without a second's hesitation, the blonde chose this option. The man smashed the glass and jumped out, falling quickly onto the street, which was filled with zombies. After this, Mike turned to Matt and noticed that his injuries looked quite serious. The hero then mockingly noted that now at least a beauty like Chelsea could take care of him. Having said this, the guy said goodbye and left, leaving his 2 companions to finish what they had started. Soon after this, the hero headed back to his business. Returning to his business, Mike took a few more leaflets and decided that was enough for today. However, the system surprised him with a new notification. His zombies' favor had increased due to him giving them food. Seeing this, the main character became furious. He began to be indignant and wondered who had allowed the zombies to feel sympathy for him. Mike decided to talk to Chelsea and Jack immediately. They were not to start treating him any better under any circumstances. At that moment, a new window appeared before the hero's eyes. He had a mission, which was to open his own business. Seeing this, Mike became wary and wondered if the system was monitoring his thoughts, since he had been thinking about this very thing just recently. Then the guy started imagining the life of a small food stand owner, and came to the conclusion that the idea wasn't so bad. However, his imagination quickly turned to reality, and the hero realized that zombies wouldn't eat such food anyway. Almost immediately, he had a new task. The notice stated that the manager, Axel, from the 12th floor still hadn't moved his car, and therefore needed to be taught a lesson. The hero accepted the challenge and decided that the system had already effectively mapped out his entire future plan of action. It consisted of getting his companions' minds in order, and then cutting 60% of the other company's employees. Without wasting any time, the guy headed towards the entrance of Wangxiang International. He then pointed forward and commanded the zombies to move forward, even though their favor was still negative. Immediately after this, Mike jumped straight towards the horde of zombies, intending to clear a path with his wrench. With a sharp movement, the hero swung his weapon and, together with his companions, began to destroy all the zombies they encountered along the way. In just a short time, the corridor was completely cleared and littered with the bodies of defeated creatures. At the same time, Mike himself and his companions did not receive a single scratch. After examining the results, the guy noted that during this attack he managed to fire a couple dozen workers. The hero then wiped his hand on the nearest zombie and decided that that was enough for today. After this, Mike turned around and ordered everyone to leave the area. Meanwhile, we find ourselves in the nearest restroom. The door of one of the stalls was locked, and several empty cans were lying on the floor. Inside, there was a young girl, sitting on the floor, completely exhausted from hunger and weakness. The girl stood up and began to complain that the courier had taken too long to show up. Almost crying, she begged him to come as soon as possible, as she could not wait any longer. However, she suddenly heard someone's voice outside, and this immediately scared her. It turned out that it was Mike, who was trying to sell real estate. The hero said that the city's largest developer had prepared a new, lucrative offer. Hearing this, the young woman covered her mouth with her hand in fear, and the hero began to convince the zombie to buy a new home. With a trembling hand, the girl nevertheless decided to open the door and see what was happening outside. When the door swung open, she froze in shock. With a tear on her cheek, the woman asked if the Almighty had heard her call. After this, the girl looked at the hero, unable to believe her own eyes. Watching what was happening, the young woman was literally frozen with fear. Carefully peering through the crack, she saw Mike surrounded by zombies. Then the girl extended her hand out the door. All she could think about was that Mike was her last hope. Meanwhile, the hero, with a smile on his face, easily dodged another attack. With a deft movement, Mike pierced one of the zombies with his spear. Then, looking at the rest of the creatures, the hero mockingly noted that they seemed to really want to see the new apartments. Immediately after this, the guy jumped over the monsters and continued his offensive. Meanwhile, the girl was kneeling on the toilet floor, completely shocked by what was happening. Soon, the protagonist found himself among the bodies of the defeated creatures, and the woman watched him and thought about how frightening this man was. Mike wiped the sweat from his forehead, and the survivor couldn't help but wonder if he could even be considered human. After this, the hero turned his head, maintaining a serious expression on his face. This made the girl shrink even more tightly on the toilet floor, still not having recovered from the shock she had experienced. And then suddenly she heard approaching footsteps and realized that the man was heading straight towards her. Mike stopped just in front of the toilet door behind which the woman was hiding. The guy then introduced himself and asked if she was interested in swimming lessons, legal advice, or selling a new home. At this point, the system notified the hero that he had reached the second level in the office worker profession. Meanwhile, Mike looked at the woman sitting on the toilet floor, and the survivor then cautiously asked if he was still alive. In response, the guy smiled broadly, showed his flyers, and happily announced that he had finally found a live client. They soon moved to the legal office to talk quietly. Sitting on the couch, the woman introduced herself as Lucy and wanted help with a legal matter for her friend. However, the lawyer's appearance visibly frightened her. Then Mike took control of the conversation. Standing next to his two zombie companions, the hero looked at her intently. Then the guy extended his hand towards Lucy with an unkind smile. The girl recoiled in fear at this gesture. She completely panicked and began to wonder how this man could control the zombies at all. Meanwhile, the protagonist lost patience with her silence, so he began to loudly complain, criticize her college, and demand an answer. Unable to bear the pressure, Lucy confessed that one of her friends had suffered greatly at work and was then attacked by his boss. Immediately after this, the system notified Mike that he had attracted a client and successfully completed the task. Then the guy walked up to the girl, holding a wrench in his hand, and calmly addressed her by name. Mike congratulated her on her excellent work and invited her to contact him again if she needed legal services. With tears in her eyes, the woman thanked the hero and admitted that she considered him a very kind person. However, the guy immediately interrupted her and asked if she had already paid for the service rendered. Hearing this question, the girl was completely confused and did not understand what exactly he meant. Mike then pointed to the manager and explained that the lawyer's consultation cost 200 units an hour, so she should pay for 30 minutes. At this point, the manager seemed touched by the recognition of his work and even began to cry. In the end, the woman reluctantly agreed that he was right. Taking advantage of the situation, the hero said that he was thinking about opening his own company and then invited her to work with him. Lucy considered the offer for a while and came to the conclusion that, despite all of Mike's oddities, he was quite strong. So the girl bowed and agreed to the offer, introducing herself as his new employee. The system soon congratulated the hero on successfully hiring an employee, but warned that opening a company required licenses. Seeing all this, the guy began to complain to the system about the excessive amount of bureaucracy in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. However, he then turned to his new employee and informed her that they needed to go to the 4th floor. On the way, the hero offered Lucy a soda. Returning to the office, Mike announced that he had finally decided on the name of the company and decided to call it Peace and Order. Smiling and giving a thumbs up, Lucy approved of the company name and remarked that it was great. After this, the hero approached the window and felt like a winner, because he had managed to acquire his own company in such a short time. Meanwhile, the new employee clapped her hands non-stop and admired him, considering him an incredible person. However, the idyll was suddenly broken by a loud sound. It turned out that the girl's stomach was growling loudly from hunger, which immediately made her embarrassed. Then Mike showed her a whole mountain of instant noodles and suggested that she eat as much as she wanted. Seeing the food, Lucy literally beamed with happiness. She thanked her new boss and admitted that she considered him the best boss in the world. Without wasting any time, the woman immediately began to eat the noodles with great appetite. Each new piece brought her real pleasure, because she had not eaten for many days. After eating, the woman relaxed on the sofa with a warm drink in her hands and looked much calmer. Meanwhile, Mike officially appointed her as an office employee of the company and instructed her to print out the employment contract. Hearing this, the girl became confused and began to wonder why she had to deal with tables in the middle of the apocalypse. In response, the guy asked with a smile whether she really didn't know how to use Excel. Immediately after this, the hero pointed to the door and introduced her to his new colleagues, Chelsea and Jack. The girl was horrified when she saw two zombies, but Mike quickly calmed her down and explained that they were just working as security guards. He then warned the new employee that it was best to stay away from the security guards, as they were not exactly friendly. After these words, Lucy became completely frightened and began to imagine the most terrible possible scenarios. However, Mike quickly brought her out of her thoughts and ordered her to get back to work, after which he pointed to her old desk. Lucy obediently sat down at the table and assured her boss that she would do her best to fulfill her duties. Without wasting any time, the woman immediately got down to work on the computer, while the hero went about his business. Mike smiled and thought that this girl really had a great future and considerable potential. The guy then announced that he needed to leave the office and attend to various company documents at the bank. Lucy looked at the computer screen with displeasure. She considered it absurd to be trying to legalize a company in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. Meanwhile, Mike announced that he was going to go in search of a new high-level specialist. In addition, the hero instructed the girl to greet this man with dignity and, if possible, hide the true nature of the other two colleagues. Suddenly, another system notification appeared in front of the hero. The screen congratulated him on the successful founding of the company and awarded him a reward. The money will be stored within the system and can be withdrawn if necessary. After this, the hero began to prepare for the next task. He decided to immediately use the new characteristic point. Without a second's hesitation, he put it into his power. And at that moment, a golden aura flared up around Mike. The hero felt his body become even stronger and better prepared for future challenges. The system then displayed his status, which included office worker, leaflet distributor, and company president. In addition, the character's characteristics have also been updated, and the strength indicator has now reached 14 units. With a satisfied smile, the hero began to study his professional skills, which included idleness and reading people. In a wave of inspiration, Mike even imagined how he would one day lead his company to the top of the world. Meanwhile, Lucy watched him with a completely bewildered look. Taking advantage of her boss's absence, the girl decided to complain to her friends in an online chat about the crazy idea of starting a company during the end of the world. The woman was noticeably nervous, covered in sweat, and had absolutely no idea how she should behave in this strange situation. Carefully peeking out the door, Lucy saw her two zombie colleagues staring at her with frightening looks. Even more frightened, the girl quickly returned to the computer and began begging her friends for help. Meanwhile, Mike reached the parking lot. There he began to look for a suitable car, and deciding that a Cadillac would be too flashy, he decided to take the small Benban. Suddenly, the headlights of a red sports car flashed next to him. Seeing this, the hero became interested and approached the car, assuming that it might be the one that suited him. The guy then tried to open the car door, but was surprised to find that it was locked. At that moment, the system notified him that he had received a part-time job as a driver to solve the new company's transportation problems. After this, the main character looked at his reflection in the car window, and the system advised him to look at life with a smile. Unfortunately, Mike took this advice too literally. The hero began loudly calling on the zombies to be polite, while simultaneously attacking them mercilessly. During the battle, the boy recognized one of the monsters. It turned out to be Uncle Van, and Mike had never even suspected that he had become a boss. Nearby, a group of survivors watched the events with undisguised horror. One of the people even tried to cover the woman's mouth with his hand. However, the main character paid no attention to the audience at all. With a mocking smile, Mike then recognized another monster, Old Man Zhao. Faced with such a horrific sight, the two survivors became desperate and tried to escape through the parking lot. However, the hero did not allow them to escape. Mike quickly jumped towards them, clearly intending to teach them a lesson. Having cleared the way, the boys stopped near one of the bodies and complained about how tiring this work was. The hero complained that zombies were attacking him. Distributing leaflets would be much easier if the creatures were friendlier. Looking around the parking lot littered with bodies, Mike wondered if anyone would even bother ordering a taxi. After that, he approached the red car and noted that the idea of calling a driver right in the parking lot seemed absolutely pointless. However, as soon as the hero touched the steering wheel, the car's engines suddenly roared. After this, the sports car suddenly took off, and the car flew out of the parking lot at high speed. Meanwhile, in another place, a man was desperately searching for medicine, but the bottle in his hand was completely empty. Then he angrily threw the empty containers on the table, finally convinced that he had nothing left to help his family. Leaning on the table, the man could barely contain his disappointment in the face of such a hopeless situation. He soon returned to his sick child, who was lying in bed next to his mother. The woman took her daughter's temperature and discovered that her daughter's high fever had not subsided at all. After this, the man told his wife that the medications had run out. Upon hearing these words, the woman could not bear it and burst into tears. The man himself also felt helpless and constantly thought about what next step they should take. However, soon his expression changed, and he told his wife that he would go outside. His wife even dropped the thermometer from her hands at these words. The woman began to beg him to give up this idea, knowing full well what dangers lay outside the house. Then the man tried to calm his wife down and explained that the situation was already so bad that it was time to risk everything. After this, he said goodbye to his family and asked his wife to take care of the child while he looked for help. Meanwhile, his daughter was fighting the illness, but her strength was already running out. Outside, the world was in complete chaos, with destroyed buildings everywhere and the streets teeming with zombies. After running for only about half an hour, the man was completely exhausted and was forced to stop to rest. He complained to himself about how terrible it was to grow old. Now he was out of breath after just a few minutes of exertion. However, suddenly the man heard zombies approaching, and in horror he began to scream and beg the creatures to stop chasing him. The man ran forward desperately, trying with all his might to save his life. It was at that moment that another survivor in a red hoodie suddenly jumped towards him. The guy in red landed right in front of him, completely blocking his path. Without a second thought, Rio delivered a powerful kick and sent the man straight towards the approaching zombies. The blow caused him to lose his balance and fall to the ground. The man in the red sweatshirt began to apologize. He explained that he himself did not want to die. The man lying on the ground was in a state of shock and could not believe what had happened. A few moments later, the zombies surrounded him from all sides and prepared to attack. The paws of one of the creatures were getting closer and closer to the man's head, and at some point he resigned himself to the thought that this was his end. However, suddenly a red car appeared at great speed. The car crashed into a crowd of zombies, scattering the creatures in different directions and thereby saving the man. With his face splattered, he was in complete shock and had no idea where this unexpected help had come from. The man then looked at the car and saw Mike behind the wheel, maintaining a calm smile. Leaning out the window, the protagonist asked if he needed a taxi ride, and the guy offered a standard fare. The system informed us that the ideal life required being a generous boss, and that decent wages prevented employees from quitting. Realizing this, Mike panicked because he remembered that he had already promised Lucy a salary of $20,000. Meanwhile, in the office, a new employee suddenly sneezed. The girl looked tired and sick, but continued to work at the computer without a single complaint. Meanwhile, her two zombie colleagues watched her with threatening expressions on their faces. Meanwhile, on the street, Mike asked the man what he was doing in this place and where he was going. In response, the stranger explained that he worked as a human resources manager and had to get to the pharmacy to get medicine for his sick daughter. Then the hero was surprised why the man did not use the car, and he admitted that he sold the car due to a difficult situation. Mike agreed that the economy was in terrible shape. Even he, the owner of the company, had to work as a taxi driver. After this, Both men were at a loss for a while. Then the main character introduced himself as the president of the Peace and Order Company, and unexpectedly offered the man a job with a high salary. The offer included a salary of 3,000 units per month, as well as housing and food. Hearing this, the man was literally speechless. And Mike explained that he was just on his way to resolve various bureaucratic issues. The man thought that something was clearly wrong with Mike, but he decided that a strange life was still better than no life at all, so he shook the hero's hand. He then explained that they first needed to get to the pharmacy, which was located quite close. After this, the guy, with excessive enthusiasm, grabbed his new acquaintance and said that they would be able to have a great chat on the way. With so much crazy energy, the desperate father began to feel that his own sanity was giving way. Once inside the car, Mike asked where the man's daughter went to school and how well she did in her studies. Pressing the gas pedal to the metal, he rammed the horde of zombies standing in his way. The passenger looked in horror at the creatures outside the car windows, while Mike complained about the impatience of people wanting to ride. The guy then angrily punched one of the zombies through the window and demanded that he stop chasing them. After this, the hero loudly declared that the car was full and he was not going to take anyone else, since it was a taxi, not a minibus. The man watched the scene in shock and wondered how this man had managed to become so burned out in just 3 days. Meanwhile, Mike hit the gas hard and made a sharp turn to get away from his pursuers. The sudden maneuver threw the passenger against the side window, while the hero himself continued driving with an unperturbed expression on his face. Having recovered a little from his fright, the man asked what had happened. With utmost calm, Mike replied that nothing special had happened, after which he lit a cigarette. The guy then explained that he was simply waiting for the traffic light to turn green, and then offered a cigarette to his passenger. The HR manager looked out the window at the destroyed city and the red traffic light. However, soon a new horde of zombies began to approach the car. The creatures quickly surrounded the car and began banging on the windows, trying to get inside. However, Mike still calmly noted that these guys were extremely impolite and did not respect the rules of the road. Seeing a zombie's hand on the window, the passenger panicked and demanded to immediately move on, because he couldn't just sit there in the middle of the end of the world. However, the hero immediately scolded the man for suggesting driving through a red light, and he also reminded him of the fines. Faced with this level of madness, the HR manager began to regret ever getting into the car. Soon, the traffic light changed to yellow, and then finally, the light turned green. Only after this did Mike sharply press the gas pedal. The car rushed forward and swept away all the creatures in front of it. The man was impressed by the hero's driving skills, who only smiled in response. Then Mike remembered that he had been playing racing games for 10 years and knew very well what Nitro Boost was. However, suddenly his expression changed. Looking in the rearview mirror, the guy told the passenger that another car was following them. The worried father immediately turned around and suggested that it might have been another driver trying to poach the client. Mike merely scoffed at the idea, stating that there were practically no other taxi drivers left during the end of the world. The hero then suggested that it could have been survivors who wanted to rob them. But then the hero suggested that these could be the zombies that he had previously destroyed in the parking lot, and who had now come for revenge. However, the man tried to remain calm and noted with a smile that zombies most likely did not know how to drive cars. Mike agreed with this argument and concluded that then they really must have been people. The hero then declared that they would definitely find a way to outwit their pursuers and discover their intentions. However, suddenly the passenger noticed another change in the protagonist's facial expression and asked what had happened. At that moment, a system notification arrived that a bodyguard had appeared somewhere nearby. At that moment, the man pointed forward in a panic and demanded that Mike immediately look at what was approaching them. Right in front of them, a giant zombie blocked the road, holding another, smaller creature in its hand. The system immediately analyzed the monster and identified it as a mutated level 3 power-type zombie. Mike immediately began to be indignant. Could it really be that this monster was the very bodyguard he was supposed to meet? The passenger suggested simply shooting down the creature. However, Mike stated that their priority remained the company's business and finding a cure. After this, the hero pressed the gas pedal all the way down. After a risky maneuver, the guy drove around the zombie, preventing it from hitting the car, and managed to leave the monster far behind. Looking back, Mike noticed that he might be crazy, but he was not an idiot. He also admitted that the creature looked like too dangerous an opponent. That's why the hero, without the slightest hesitation, pressed the gas pedal to the floor again, and sped away. Meanwhile, inside the second car, a girl with pink hair suggested to her boyfriend that they turn around to avoid danger. However, the driver only smiled mockingly and assured her that there was no need to worry, since the car in front was already clearing the way for them. With an unkind expression on his face, the man decided to take advantage of the situation and continue moving. Thus, the silver car rushed straight towards the mutated zombie remaining at the intersection. The giant creature noticed the new target and immediately turned to meet it. Meanwhile, the HR manager asked Mike what it was all about, as the creature was very different from the other zombies. The hero replied that this creature could only be the very same advanced bodyguard that the system had mentioned earlier. The passenger was completely confused and asked how the bodyguard could possibly look like that. Meanwhile, behind them, the silver car was getting closer and closer to the green monster, and suddenly, in the place where the zombie was, a giant explosion thundered. Despite what was happening, Mike continued to drive calmly, and they soon reached a safe place. After stopping, the hero asked to pay for the ride. Then the man asked if he could pay with a bank card, after which he handed it to Mike. After receiving the card, the guy noticed that the money was quite useful, especially when it came to paying employees' salaries. The man came to the conclusion that Mike was crazy, but he belonged to that rare category of crazy people who could be trusted. Moreover, the man realized that without the hero's help, he would have died long ago. After this, the passenger continued the conversation and asked how many employees worked in the company and whether there was enough food for everyone. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Mike invited him to join the company and asked him to introduce himself first for evaluation. The man said his name was Lucas, and that he had previously worked as a human resources manager at a brewery and was training to become an electrician. Hearing this, the hero noticeably perked up. The guy declared that the electrician was exactly the specialist the company needed right now. Then Lucas asked if it was possible to take his wife and son with him, and with a smile on his face, Mike immediately agreed. However, at that moment, the system warned him that the use of child labor was prohibited. However, the hero quickly decided that if he didn't pay the boy a salary, it wouldn't be considered employment. The hero then asked the man about his salary expectations, but Lucas replied that he simply wanted to work hard. Hearing these words, Mike was deeply touched. His eyes literally sparkled. After this, the guy grabbed the new employee by the hands and began to explain how important he was to the company. However, the system interrupted him with a warning that the company had a mandatory minimum wage. Mike then began to scold the new employee, saying that he should not have considered the company a feudal state. Moreover, the guy loudly emphasized that this was his principle, which could not be violated. After this, the hero announced that since the man was just joining the company, he would be accepted as an intern. Mike then offered him a monthly salary of $8,000 a month and asked if he was satisfied with those terms. Faced with such a generous offer, Lucas immediately agreed and expressed his readiness to join the company. Afterwards, Mike shook his hand and welcomed the new employee, noting that from that moment on, the company became his new home. The hero noticed that there was no time left to complete the paperwork, so he suggested that the man go get medicine for his daughter. Before leaving, the guy handed the new employee a kitchen knife and warned that it was to be used only for self-defense. Mike looked at him carefully with a serious gaze, waiting for an answer. Holding a knife in his hand, Lucas promised that he would definitely obey the laws. After this, the hero suddenly stepped on the gas and drove away, leaving the new employee alone near the pharmacy. The desperate father stood on the sidewalk for a moment with a knife in his hand, not quite sure what he should do next. However, a smile soon appeared on his face. With the new weapon, the man felt much safer. Meanwhile, Mike, having dropped off the employee near the pharmacy, finally reached his apartment. As soon as the hero entered inside, it became obvious how tired he was after a long day of work. So the guy immediately threw his dirty shirt on the floor and began to prepare for rest. Completely exhausted, the hero collapsed on the bed and thought about how wonderful his life had become now that he had company. Then Mike stretched and decided that he would first take a shower and then get a good night's sleep, since the next day promised to be a new stage in his life. Having settled down on the bed, the hero received a new notification from the system, which informed him that the ideal life began with the ideal sleep. Upon learning this, Mike was genuinely happy, as he realized that he could now receive rewards even while sleeping. With a satisfied smile, Mike came to the conclusion that now his life really had become perfect. 2 days passed, and after the guy dealt with all the bureaucracy, Mike prepared to return to the company, so the hero stepped on the gas and raced through the destroyed streets of the city. This time, Lucas was behind the wheel, while Mike himself sat relaxed in the passenger seat and looked at his phone. On the phone screen, the guy saw news about the creation of a civil rescue committee, as well as the names of its leaders. This seemed strange to him. People were already organizing themselves into response groups. He felt that something was wrong with this story. His thoughts were suddenly interrupted by a system notification informing him that a special talent was nearby. Then Mike looked out the window and noticed something that caught his attention right in the middle of the street. In the center of the road lay a giant mutated zombie, surrounded by a group of survivors. The protagonist recognized the wrecked car and realized that it was the same car that had previously followed them. After this, he ordered his new employee to stop the car. Lucas watched the zombies and wondered what exactly his boss was planning, but decided to simply follow orders. Mike then got out of the car and, with a completely calm look, asked his employee what he thought the lying zombie was doing. After this, the guy took the axe and with a mocking smile noted that the monster looked like it was just waiting for work. Without wasting any time, the hero headed towards the fallen creature. Meanwhile, the rest of the zombies prepared to attack him. However, Mike quickly rushed forward. With one swing, he cut two zombies in half and cleared a path for himself. Then the guy continued his merciless attack and finished off another creature with one precise blow. Lucas watched in shock at the incredible strength of his new boss. Already covered in splashes of blood and dirt, the protagonist approached the fallen monster and asked how much he had earned today. The giant creature only growled in response. Then Mike realized that the monster wasn't expecting a job at all, but had simply been hit by a car, and advised him to hold on. As he got closer, the boy noticed that the zombie's leg was regenerating, which made him wonder if such creatures could regenerate. Having struck him on the hand with an axe, the hero told him not to rush things. Mike realized that this zombie was noticeably different from the others, so he began to think about studying it. Watching from afar, Lucas thought that his boss might not be quite normal. Without wasting any more time, the hero raised his axe and cut off the creature's arm with one blow. Mike stood over the fallen monster, holding the newly severed limb in his hands. A moment later, the guy indifferently threw it aside, completely oblivious to what was happening. After this, he continued to attack the creature mercilessly. Leaning against the car, his new employee lit a cigarette, completely shocked by the brutality of the scene he had witnessed. Lucas then asked about the legality of such actions, but Mike calmly replied that what lay before them was not a person, but a zombie. Moreover, with a grim smile, the guy wondered whether there were any laws protecting zombies at all. The hero explained that he sensed something unusual in this monster, and therefore studying the creature was a scientific study. To continue his exploration, Mike picked up a wrench. The boy then rushed towards the creature with the instrument in his hands, preparing for the next stage of his research. With a powerful blow, he smashed the monster's head with a wrench. This scene shocked his employee, who looked at what was happening with genuine horror. Sitting down next to the monster, the protagonist continued his exploration. To his surprise, he discovered a crystal inside the creature's head and wondered if it was intended to enhance superpowers. The employee came closer and asked what it was. But instead of answering, Mike only asked for a napkin to wipe his hand. Without asking any unnecessary questions, the man handed the napkins to the boss. The hero then carefully used it to lift the crystal and avoid direct contact. Having received the item, the guy stood up and informed his employee that it was time to return to the company. In addition, he came to the conclusion that it was necessary to find a specialist to study the crystal. After some time, they finally arrived at the company building. The first mission of the Peace and Order Company was completed successfully. Not only did they manage to clear up the bureaucratic issues, but they also hired 3 new talented employees. Watching his boss, Lucas wondered if he had really found a new job under such conditions. Once inside the building, Mike announced that the company required weekly reports. The hero was irritated by some large companies, and he thought that some people made money on women and others on children. After this, the guy stated that the money he was going to earn would come from everyone without exception. Mike looked at his intern and thought he was malleable and had an excellent chance of getting a position in 3 months. When they entered the building, they were met by a large, strong man in a yellow cap. However, this man turned out to be a zombie and immediately rushed at them, preparing to attack. However, Mike was not at all afraid and, clutching an axe in his hands, prepared for battle. With one precise blow, The hero killed the creature, after which he said that they were neighbors, and therefore it should have shown more politeness. After this short lesson, Lucas applauded his boss, and Mike then noted that he liked hardworking people. The next day, a new working day began at the Peace and Order Company. Lucas arrived with his family and asked his daughter to show respect to the boss and pretend the apocalypse didn't exist. He then explained to his wife that if they didn't work, they would simply have nothing to eat. The woman began to realize that her new boss might not be as crazy as she had previously thought. However, her husband immediately interrupted these thoughts and insisted that Mike's mental state was completely normal. Lucas then asked his wife to hand over all the bank cards and family savings to him. After this, he announced with a determined look that he was going to do something very important and large-scale with this money. When they entered the office, they found Lucy and Mike already working at their desks. The young woman was completely focused on her duties and typed on the computer non-stop. Lucas then introduced his family to Mike, who greeted them with a smile and informed them that there were enough free desks in the office. After this, the guy instructed the girl to take the child and help him find a place. However, Lucas was completely confused by what was happening and could not understand where exactly she was or what was happening around her. Lucy continued to do her work, but it was obvious that the conversations behind her back were really irritating her. Meanwhile, Lucas walked up to Mike and, smiling, handed him his credit card as a small gift. The hero was instantly inspired by the sight of such a bribe and thought that his new employee understood perfectly well how life works. However, the system quickly put an end to his joy and scolded him for even thinking about accepting a bribe. Forced to do the right thing, the boy leaned back in his chair and told Lucas that he was extremely disappointed with his behavior. The new employee immediately apologized for trying to use a bribe to get a promotion. Lucy overheard the entire conversation and was surprised that this strange company was actually operating quite legally. Then the main character encouraged Lucas and said that if he worked hard, the company would definitely promote him. However, the guy thought to himself that it was rather presumptuous for a person who had just arrived to already be thinking about a promotion. Mike then instructed Lucy to print out 2 employment contracts for the new employees to formalize their joining the team. The girl complained that there was no electricity, but the hero only replied that everything could have been written by hand. Mike criticized her for her lack of initiative and, as punishment, cut her salary in half, from $20,000 to $10,000. Lucy accepted the punishment calmly and admitted that the mistake was indeed her fault. Mike then instructed her to take the couple to the conference room to sign the contracts. He also ordered copies of the documents to be prepared for Chelsea, Jack, and 2 other new employees who were scheduled to arrive later. Soon, the system notified Mike that the company was now fully operational and he could hold the meeting. Without wasting any time, the guy called Chelsea and Jack, inviting them to go with him to the meeting. After this, he entered the conference room and informed those present that the meeting would begin first, but the copies of the contracts could wait. When the boss appeared, everyone present rose from their seats as a sign of respect. Then Lucas helpfully pulled out a chair for Mike to sit down. His wife looked at her husband's behavior, but soon understood the hint. The woman perked up and figured out how she could win over her new boss. Then she walked up to Mike and offered him a can of soda. The hero praised his new employees and noted that they were simply impeccable. Meanwhile, Lucy watched the whole scene with an extremely skeptical expression on her face, feeling like she was being left out. Then the girl irritably tapped her pen on the table several times, showing her displeasure. After this, she suddenly rose to her feet and declared that she was the most experienced employee in the company and that her boss valued her the most. Not wanting to give in, the girl immediately offered to massage her boss's shoulders, hinting that he was probably tired after his business trip. She also boasted that she graduated from a good university and was well-versed in social interactions. While Mike was simply enjoying the moment, Chelsea, Jack, and Lucas's baby were sleeping peacefully right at the table. Finally, the hero took a sip of the drink and asked everyone to calm down and remain silent. With the attention of those present fully focused on him, the guy prepared to begin the company's first official meeting. First, he began restructuring the organization. The hero created 2 divisions, a sanitation and cleaning department and a communications and service department. Mike established the most important rule of the company, which was the harmonious coexistence of people and zombies without discrimination. Upon hearing the new rule, the human employees applauded approvingly, and the zombies expressed their agreement with approving growls. The protagonist then opened the discussion and stated that the company supported freedom of speech. After this, he gave the floor to Lucy as he noticed that she had an important question. The girl asked what exactly the company's activities would be focused on. In response, Mike explained that the organization would clean the building and would also accept requests from Wangxiang International. After that, he instructed Lucy to manually prepare contracts and create the necessary spreadsheets to send the pair to another company. Once all the issues had been resolved, Mike declared the meeting closed, and apparently everyone present was satisfied. The system congratulated the hero on holding the meeting and informed him that all that remained now was to sort out the other company's problems. After the meeting concluded, Mike dismissed the staff. However, as he was leaving the room, he noticed Chelsea and Jack, who were calmly snacking on someone's remains. The guy stopped and watched this scene for a while both continued eating, not even noticing their boss. Suddenly, the red crystal that the hero wore around his neck as a pendant began to glow brightly. As soon as the glow appeared, both creatures instantly stopped eating and stared at him with mesmerized gazes. Then Mike realized what was happening. He grabbed the pendant and asked if this was what they wanted. After this, both zombies came to life, and the main character realized that the item he had found was an evolution crystal. The guy realized that he had received the perfect tool for controlling his zombie employees. He then turned to the human staff and ordered them to finish the contracts and tidy up the office. Mike stated that they had 3 days to clear out the entire building and turn it into a real company. The hero then hung the crystal on the end of a stick and ordered everyone to find out as quickly as possible what exactly this ruby did. Meanwhile, the system displayed a detailed description of the item. It turned out that it was a basic evolutionary crystal of the power type. Mike decided he had found a better way to control, or rather direct, his employees. And so he established a new corporate rule. According to this rule, those who bit people would not receive rubies. Hearing this, both zombies desperately wanted to get to the crystal. Mike then smiled and told his 2 zombie employees that they should work hard and clean up the company. Both creatures looked incredibly motivated and ready to immediately begin a thorough cleaning of the building. Seeing their enthusiasm, the hero decided to take this as consent and concluded that they understood the order. At that moment, his human employees appeared at the door and announced that the contracts were ready to be signed. Once in the office, the protagonist asked Lucas's wife if their daughter had gotten better after taking the medicine. The woman replied that the fever had indeed passed, but the girl still felt unwell, and she did not understand the reason for this. Mike then advised her to closely monitor her daughter's health while working, since children were the future. Immediately after this, the system notified him that the girl was developing a special mutant inflammation, and Mike needed to cure this inflammation. The hero was extremely surprised by such a mission. He had no understanding whatsoever of how to treat illnesses and only knew remedies for colds. However, an idea soon occurred to him, and he opened a system store to check if any special medicine was sold there. After opening the store, the boy found a package of cold medicine that looked like the solution to his problem. Without thinking, he confirmed the purchase, and the system notified him of the successful exchange. At that moment, a box of medicine appeared in his hands, while Lucas's wife looked at what was happening in complete bewilderment. Mike explained that a friend of his had developed this special medicine, and if he gave it to his daughter, the girl would definitely get better. When the hero was about to leave, Lucas asked where the boss was heading. At the same time, Lucy offered to go with him, stating that she had managed to hone her skills in distributing leaflets. The girl was sure that she could now distribute leaflets very quickly and would certainly prove useful. However, Mike interrupted her and explained that it was not about distributing leaflets at all. Then the guy explained that there were many employees in the company, and he himself was going to go there to find Axel's boss. He stated that he used to be timid and could only deal with zombies through proper positioning. Now, however, he was going to go full force and use one zombie against another. After this, the guy said goodbye and left, and the employees told him to be careful. As soon as he left the office, the others fell silent. Lucas's wife asked her husband if they really should have given the medicine to their daughter. The man replied that Mike would not harm them, and that now they needed to try absolutely everything possible. He also added that in their situation, there was simply no other choice. After this, the couple walked through the office to their daughter. When they approached the girl, the mother handed her the medicine along with a glass of water. The girl took the glass and drank the entire contents. Her parents watched the proceedings with great excitement and anxiety, awaiting the outcome. Suddenly, the girl opened her eyes. She looked completely healthy and called out to her mother with a smile. She then pointed to her father and stated that her mother had deceived her, and that he was not a surgeon at all. These words completely confused the parents. The spouses looked at each other and did not know what to answer to such a strange remark. However, the mother soon cast aside all doubts and hugged her daughter tightly, while the father celebrated her recovery. Meanwhile, Lucy sat sadly at the door, thinking about how her own parents were doing now. However, a moment later the girl turned around in shock, realizing that the child had recovered in less than a minute after taking the medicine. I started to wonder if I had somehow gotten a job at a corporation like Umbrella. Lucy came to the conclusion that her boss, Mike, was simply an incredible person. Meanwhile, the hero climbed the stairs with an axe on his shoulder, preparing to carry out his mission. At that moment, the system congratulated him on his good deed for spending 20 points on treating an employee's daughter. The task was completed with a perfect grade, and he also unlocked the secret achievement, Talented and Virtuous. The guy was extremely pleased with the praise and even asked the system to continue praising him because he really liked hearing it. The hero decided to invest new points in his spirit, so that no one would dare to claim that his mental state was abnormal. He then analyzed his characteristics and came to the conclusion that his physique and spirit were still not high enough. Continuing on his way, Mike met two zombies at the top of the stairs who were blocking the passage. Both were ready to attack at any moment. Mike stated that during the apocalypse, too many employees were hurting the business, so he decided to make cuts. With these words, he rushed forward. Mike fired his first employee with one blow of an axe for poor customer service. Having dealt with the first target, the hero quickly ran up the stairs to the next enemy. He then killed the second creature, blaming it on a lack of basic professional competence. After this, the way was clear. Mike climbed the blood-stained stairs and soon heard noises coming from behind the large door. With a mocking smile, Mike noted that he had been given a truly celebratory welcome. The hero then stopped in front of the door, introduced himself as Mike from Peace and Order, and announced that he had arrived to help with the downsizing. Upon entering the office, the protagonist encountered another horde of zombies, and the battle immediately resumed. The guy moved deftly between the opponents and dealt a powerful blow with an axe to one of the dead men. He then continued his attack, continually dodging attacks and counterattacking. A satisfied smile appeared on his face as he clearly enjoyed it. Soon, the office floor was littered with laid-off employees, after which Mike declared the job complete. Then the hero approached the last door and turned to Chief Axel, asking him not to be too happy. Meanwhile, outside the building, life continued as usual. However, in a nearby fruit shop, a familiar face was peeking out the window. The blonde watched the street from his hiding place. This place was also filled with the bodies of fallen creatures. Martin, who used to be the deputy manager of Wangxiang International, said they shouldn't have competed with him for resources. He threatened to deal with anyone who stood in his way. With a sadistic smile, the boy noted that the apocalypse was wonderful, since now he could do whatever he wanted without fear of consequences. Suddenly, the man noticed someone approaching, and a voice ordered his two companions to work faster. Looking out the window, Martin was completely shocked by what he saw. The blonde couldn't understand how a man could walk around with zombies and why the creatures themselves were behaving so strangely. But then something even stranger happened. A fried chicken stall suddenly flew down the street. Martin finally panicked and started wondering what it all was. Meanwhile, the system informed Mike that all night shift employees of Wangxiang International had been successfully fired. After this, 3 new options for action appeared before him, and the hero chose the first option, which involved continuing the fight. At first, Mike was going to invest his 1.5 attribute points into agility, but then he changed his mind and decided to save the experience for now. While inspecting the building, the guy said that he would not be able to feel at peace until he took complete control of the place. At that moment, the system notified him that the leader of the first team of the sanitation and cleaning department, Liam, had arrived at the designated location. The hero looked at the fried chicken stall and realized that he could now complete tasks while eating. Afterwards, he approached the new employee, a red-haired zombie, and praised him for his hard work during the journey. Martin was completely stunned by what was happening and began to seriously wonder if he had gone crazy. Meanwhile, Mike tasked Liam with clearing the 2nd and 3rd floors of all zombies and then joining forces with the others to completely clear the building. Without wasting any time, the protagonist sent the creature on its mission, and the chicken stall immediately rushed forward at incredible speed. The red-haired zombie immediately jumped forward, ready to begin his first cleaning mission. With impressive speed, the creature headed towards the building. Meanwhile, in the shelter, Martin continued to observe what was happening. He recognized the zombie manager as the former manager of the building below. Then the blonde became even more interested in the situation and decided to personally find out how this zombie differed from the others. After this, the action moved to the city buildings, which were now in complete chaos. Meanwhile, Mike walked along the now cleaned corridor and praised the results of the work, noting that everything now looked clean and beautiful. When the hero entered the office, a new married couple of employees joyfully greeted him. The couple then bowed respectfully and declared that the director was the savior of their family. The guy replied with a smile that if they really wanted to thank him, they should have worked hard. The couple assured him that they would definitely make every effort. Even the little girl thanked Uncle Mike, although she looked a little scared. Lucas immediately reprimanded his daughter and stated that she should not have addressed him as uncle. Then the man thought that he wanted much more. The director should be revered as an ancestor, since without him he would not have achieved anything. After this, the girl finally called Mike grandfather. The hero stroked her head and said that she was the future of the company. The guy thought that after such a gesture, any employee would gladly agree to work overtime. Then the main character gave a speech to the employees. He said that the company was just beginning its development. The family greeted the chief's speech with applause. After this, Mike said goodbye to them, informing them that he still had business matters to attend to, and then told everyone to get back to work. However, a system notification suddenly appeared, stating that an employee had suffered an industrial injury and died. Mike panicked when he saw that he had to pay compensation of 1,140,000 yuan. The system soon clarified that since the employee was not human, the compensation amount was reduced to 380,000 yuan. After this, the guy breathed a sigh of relief, glad that he didn't have to pay the full amount. However, soon his facial expression changed dramatically. The hero realized that someone had dared to eliminate one of his employees. With a wicked smile, Mike thought that the next time an employee was on the verge of death, he should fire him first. He then turned to the couple and announced that one of his best employees, Jack, a company veteran, had died while on the job. The hero stated that Jack was his right hand even before the company itself was founded, and also accompanied him during the most difficult times. Mike leaned back dramatically and screamed, showing that his heart was broken over the death of his coworker. However, his sadness soon gave way to rage. The hero punched the wall and demanded to find out who was to blame for what happened. When the whole team had gathered together, the guy ordered a cart with 200 pieces of fried chicken to be brought in and prepared. Mike then specifically warned the human staff to be careful and not go up to other floors. The hero announced that it was time to hunt and that only he had the right to get rid of his employees. Without wasting any time, he decided to invest all his points into dexterity to begin carrying out his revenge. Meanwhile, a horde of zombies wandered aimlessly along the road outside. Soon Mike, along with his two zombie companions, moved forward, preparing to clear the way. At the main character's command, both bodyguards rushed forward. Liam led the attack. His eyes glowed with fury as he delivered a powerful blow to the head of one of the monsters. The creature then continued its real slaughter and effortlessly cleared the way, scattering the remaining zombies to the sides. His face was filled with rage as he moved forward relentlessly. Soon, this attack led them straight to the fruit stand where the enemy was hiding. Inside the store, Martin found himself in the midst of a massacre he had caused himself, which had allowed him to survive. He looked at the remains of the zombie manager, trying to understand why the creature was moving bodies instead of attacking people like the others. Suddenly, the silence was broken by loud bangs on the metal door of the store. The blonde tensed and wondered who could be knocking on the front door with so many zombies outside. Then he carefully walked to the window and peered through the gap between the curtains to see what was going on. The street outside already resembled a real cemetery, with zombie bodies lying everywhere. Martin was completely shocked and could not believe that all these creatures had actually been defeated. However, he soon noticed that one zombie was still alive and continued to beat against the glass door. Then he leaned harder against the glass, watching what was happening. Mike stood outside with an axe in his hand, covered in dirt and battle scars. Seeing him, the blonde realized that in front of him stood the same person who controlled the zombie. Then he worriedly wondered if they noticed him. Meanwhile, the protagonist noted with regret that there was a person at the place where his employee died. So the guy knocked on the store door and demanded that they open it, explaining that they needed to discuss a very important matter. Hearing the voice outside, Martin was surprised and realized that the person standing in front of the door was an ordinary person. Then a smile appeared on his face, and he decided that since the enemy was a human, there was no other way out but to fight. After this, the blonde man opened the door of the store and with a fake smile apologized to Mike, explaining that he was a little nervous. The man then introduced himself as the deputy director of Wangxiang International, named Martin, and asked the other person's name. However, Mike immediately realized that he was dealing with a real bastard and that all this politeness was just a trap. Nevertheless, the hero decided to play along and also introduced himself. Martin perked up noticeably when he heard his last name, then joked that they could well have been related 500 years ago. In response, the guy agreed with a smile and noted that this was indeed entirely possible. However, the protagonist already had suspicions inside himself, so he decided to use his ability to read people. The screen showed information about Martin. He was a mentally unstable killer. He could increase his level if he eliminated 4 more people. The man then invited Mike inside the store, explaining that it was unsafe to talk outside. The hero accepted the invitation and went inside, while the blonde already considered him a complete simpleton. But he did not have time to finish this thought. The next moment, Mike suddenly attacked him with an unexpected kick. The blow hit home and sent Martin flying back into the store. The guy collapsed to the floor, completely stunned and not understanding how he himself had been so easily deceived. The protagonist then put his foot on his back and demanded to know who gave him the right to eliminate one of his employees. The hero accused his opponent of having dealt not only with the old man Lou from the fruit shop, but also with other people in the alley. He then pinned Martin's head to the floor with his foot, preventing him from speaking, and looked at him with open contempt. Mike gave him a powerful kick and declared that he was a real beast, unworthy of the name Meng. The blonde began to beg for his life. He explained that he was only trying to protect himself, and also promised to work as a slave if he was spared. Then the hero stood up and began to read him his rights, warning that everything he said would be used against him. Then a sly smile appeared on Mike's face, and he said that he still had a chance to survive since anyone could make mistakes. At that moment, one of his zombie employees appeared at the door. After this, the boy said that further explanations were no longer necessary as the creature slowly approached the kneeling man. However, putting off revenge for later, the hero called Chelsea over and ordered her to start collecting fruit from the store. Meanwhile, Liam looked at Martin with a sinister smile, clearly preparing to teach him a lesson. Mike himself had already begun looting the store and soon came out with a box of apples in his hands. The system was amazed at how quickly the hero managed to get himself into trouble, and then recommended creating a legal department. Suddenly, Mike remembered the lawyer Sean, who was on the floor above, and then he realized that he was the ideal candidate. He then told Chelsea to stop fiddling with the fruit as she was going to be responsible for carrying the mineral water. And then the guy stopped and looked at her with a serious gaze, as if he noticed something unusual. The girl turned to him in bewilderment, and Mike was surprised and noted that her face had become a little more beautiful than before. At that moment, a system screen appeared in front of him, informing him that Chelsea had become a level 1 zombie cleaner. The hero then came to the conclusion that even though she hadn't done anything special, the level up was still good news. Liam's roar came from behind them, and Mike heard it and decided that the vice principal had apparently failed to win this fight. Soon the creature pulled out a blonde man, who now also looked like a zombie. The system showed that his level of sympathy for Mike was minus 100%. Having assessed the situation, the guy decided to officially appoint Martin as a service dog for the company's security service with a salary of $8,000. After this, Mike gave the new worker his first assignment. He ordered him to go upstairs, pick up Jack's body, and bury it. Having dealt with all the matters, the hero returned to the office. As soon as the guy walked inside, the staff greeted him warmly, and Lucy informed him that the 200 chicken strips he had ordered were ready. The girl explained that it was a team effort and then asked if the department had done a good job. In response, Mike gave them a thumbs up and said that their job was excellent. After that, Lucas and Lucy exchanged glances. The girl then told the director that everyone had already learned about Jack's death and that the news had broken their hearts. In turn, the little girl showed several multicolored paper cranes that they folded for Grandpa Mike. Mike thanked them for the gesture and noted that Jack would probably be happy. And he also said that he had already avenged him. Lucas's wife praised her husband for being so understanding of his boss's preferences. In response, the man explained that everything turned out to be quite simple, since he was simply adapting to the situation. After this, Mike said that since everyone had shown such concern, he had a new task for them. He ordered them to go down and carry the water and fruits that had been obtained during the foray. After this, Mike called Lucy and told her to go with him to get the remaining strips. When they found themselves in the corridor, the girl hesitantly called out to the director. Then she took his hand, which greatly surprised the hero and confused him. Her palm became stained with blood from Mike's hand. And at that moment, the girl realized what she had just touched. The protagonist then told her to prepare a simple contract to hire attorney Sean for the company's new legal department. The girl was confused and asked if he was talking about the same lawyer who turned into a zombie. Mike responded with a smile, confirming this and explaining that the company was growing and the legal department was vital. Meanwhile, in the office, Lucy continued to work on the computer while the couple cleaned the premises. The couple watched the girl from afar. Lucas's wife noticed that after returning from the top floor with the director, she seemed a little distracted. The employee herself still could not recover from her recent memories. Lucy thought she had gotten used to Mike by now, but in reality, she hadn't. Soon, Mike clapped his hands, getting everyone's attention, and prepared to make an important announcement. He then introduced the newest member of the legal department, attorney Sean, who peered through the door with a disgruntled expression on his face. Immediately after this, a system screen appeared with information about the new employee. Mike warmly greeted his new colleague and declared that they would be developing the company together. But the zombie lawyer only growled in response. Nevertheless, the protagonist was extremely pleased with the new hire. He decided that the lawyer had voluntarily agreed to a salary reduction. The guy then announced that the company's next task would be to descend into an underground garage to transport fruit. After this, the story moved to a dark, destroyed city street. A large white bus was driving down the street among the rubble. There were a few survivors inside, crying and complaining about their fate, accompanied by armed soldiers. One of the rescued men, a man named Will, was relieved to have been rescued by the military. The man then looked at the other passengers and sighed heavily, not understanding how the world could turn into a real nightmare in just one night. Suddenly, a man approached him and introduced himself as Chuck, an architecture student who had once attended one of his lectures. After that, the guy leaned closer and told Dean Will with a smile that he didn't live very close. When Will shook his hand in confusion, the situation became even stranger. The next moment, the young man's eyes lit up with a red light, after which he said that he came here to meet him. Chuck pulled the dean toward him sharply, twisting his arm, and he screamed for help. One of the soldiers heard the screams and immediately rushed to find out what was happening. Meanwhile, Chuck threatened Will and stated that if he did not die, it would be extremely difficult to carry out the great plan to cleanse the world. Soon the soldier came closer and suspiciously asked what exactly the young man had just said. Then, two more soldiers approached the scene and stood opposite the guy, preparing to intervene in the situation. However, the young man did not hesitate and immediately attacked one of the soldiers with a quick blow. The second soldier reacted immediately and pointed his weapon at the attacker. Soon, a burst of gunfire rang out, and the soldier tried to stop the enemy, who was rapidly running away from him. However, even after several hits, the guy continued to run away, without slowing down at all. Then, with remarkable agility, he leaped over the bus seats and raced on. The bus driver was completely shocked when he saw what was happening in his rearview mirror. Meanwhile, Chuck didn't waste a second and quickly reached the front of the vehicle. Then, with one powerful blow, the guy broke the glass and hit the man right in the face. The force of the impact was so great that the windshield shattered, and the driver instantly lost consciousness. The bus then lost control, and the young man jumped out as soldiers opened fire on him. The bullets hit the young man directly, but he seemed completely oblivious to his wounds. Inside the bus, one of the soldiers took control of the steering wheel. He tried to turn the vehicle sharply to stop it. However, soon the same soldier jumped out of the moving bus, trying to save himself from an imminent accident. As a result of the sudden maneuver, the bus overturned and began to slide down the street. Then Chuck's hand appeared among the debris. He had survived the crash without any serious consequences. Soon the boy climbed onto the overturned bus and calmly wiped the corner of his mouth. Meanwhile, one of the surviving soldiers rose to his feet and pointed his weapon at the young man, preparing to continue the fight. The military identified him as a rebel, and decided that he needed to be eliminated immediately. A moment came to mind when they had previously received orders from command to neutralize any rebels they encountered. Determined to carry out the order at any cost, the soldier opened fire on Chuck again. This time, a hail of bullets finally knocked the young man off the roof of the bus, and he fell to the ground. However, even though he was covered in wounds and bleeding, the boy began to rise as if nothing had happened. The soldier was completely shocked by what he saw and could not believe that the young man was still alive. Then Chuck spread his arms out to the sides. Meanwhile, additional soldiers began to approach the battlefield, and the military continued to fire continuously. Despite the bullets piercing his body, the young man continued to move forward, his eyes glowing red. Then the guy went on the attack, and soon he reached one of the soldiers. While chaos reigned around, Will took advantage of the distraction and climbed onto the overturned bus. With an expression of genuine horror on his face, the man watched the battle unfold and was completely shocked by what he saw. The dean didn't hesitate and jumped to the other side of the bus to escape. After that, he rushed through the dark streets of the city and soon disappeared into the darkness. Meanwhile, at the military command center, one of the officers reported that the rescue operation had failed. This was far from the first such attack, in fact. The safe zone had been suffering from disappearances and zombie infestations for some time now. They managed to capture one of the representatives of this group, and during interrogation, he claimed that this was a test from a certain ruler. Upon hearing this information, the officer became furious and slammed his fist on the table, considering them to be an ordinary cult. The man then thought about how dangerous these people were, since they looked no different from everyone else. The officer then gave the difficult order to abandon some of the cities and retreat in order to reduce the perimeter of the safe zone. After that, he leaned back wearily in his chair and came to the conclusion that at the moment they could only solve one problem at a time. Meanwhile, night had fallen over the city, but the work at the Peace and Order Company was still far from complete. Mike sat relaxed on the couch when the system congratulated him on completing another task with a perfect grade. Then the protagonist came to the conclusion that since the clients left reviews, next time he would be kinder and would not let them suffer. However, a moment later, the hero became enraged and demanded to find out who left a bad review after the last sale of fried chicken. The guy complained that he still couldn't make progress inside the building and needed more lawyers. Moreover, the president of Wangxiang International was still missing, so the hero decided that he would have to go out into the field. Hearing the words about off-site work, the girl blushed slightly and decided that the director's interested gaze was directed specifically at her. Mike approached her and instructed her to prepare the meeting minutes, since he was going to leave for a new assignment the next day. To further motivate the team, he prepared a tray completely filled with fried sausages. When everyone had gathered in the conference room, the protagonist announced that, in order to internationalize the company, a joint work schedule would be introduced. According to his plan, the workday was to begin at 8 a.m. New York time and end at 5 p.m. Beijing time. Lucy was completely shocked by this proposal and declared that her boss turned out to be too much of a capitalist. After this, the hero announced a vote. All those who agreed must raise their hand, and those who remain silent will also be considered as agreeing. Lucy objected that such a vote could not be considered fair, since, apart from the three people, all the other employees were zombies. In response, Mike chuckled and stated that the employee had chosen the wrong path, and he demoted her to acting team leader. Lucy was puzzled by this decision. Then the hero explained that she needed to learn to see the big picture of what was happening. With tears in her eyes, Lucy realized that she had been skillfully manipulated, but she could do nothing about it. Meanwhile, Mike continued the meeting and announced that he would be leaving on business the next morning. Lucas's wife praised the director for his foresight and attention to detail. Lucy, however, watched with disgust at such blatant sycophancy and called the couple office plankton. Nevertheless, Mike was very pleased with what was happening. He ended the meeting and ordered everyone to return to work. As soon as the employees began to disperse, the system notified the protagonist that he had accumulated 14 experience points to distribute. Without thinking twice, Mike decided to invest all his accumulated points into the profession of a diner owner. Thanks to this, his level increased to the second, and along with it, his dexterity, endurance, and spirit indicators increased. The next morning, a new day began in the city, and the streets now seemed a little quieter than before. Meanwhile, near the building, Mike was preparing to leave for another away mission in his red car. At that moment, Lucas's daughter approached him and handed him a paper crane, wishing him a safe trip. The hero gently stroked the girl's head and told her that she should study hard while her grandfather was away. The guy then turned to Lucy and appointed her as the new head of the educational group, responsible for teaching the children. The girl was completely confused and did not understand why she still had to go to school in the middle of the apocalypse. In response, Mike said with a smile that schools would not close until the universe exploded. After this, he said goodbye to everyone, got into the car, and the employees wished him a safe journey. Racing through the city streets, the hero thought about his plan. He was going to check the safe zone and invite new lawyers to the company. Soon the guy smiled contentedly and came to the conclusion that his plan was flawless and quite worthy of his genius. However, suddenly the car shook violently. Mike flinched and at first did not understand what had happened. Looking ahead, he noticed a man lying right in the middle of the road in front of his car. A moment later, the stranger rose to his feet, and it turned out that he was a zombie with a license plate attached to his chest. The hero noted with irritation that his car had been damaged, and then warned the creature that it was looking for one-way tickets. Without wasting any time, Mike pressed the gas pedal, intending to finally deal with the monster. The car quickly rushed forward and crashed into the zombie with great force. The impact threw the creature far forward, but this was not enough. Glancing in the rearview mirror and seeing that the enemy was still not defeated, the guy decided to use his ability to analyze people. The system quickly identified the target as a mutated level 1 zombie that specialized in endurance. Then Mike took an axe, got out of the car, and thought about how mutated zombies were becoming too common. After that, he looked at the monster and ordered it to get away, since he was not accepting any travel orders at the moment. Without a second's hesitation, the hero rushed into the attack with an axe at the ready. He unleashed a series of brutal blows on the mutant. Finally, Mike finished the fight with a final lunge. Having finished with the enemy, the guy sat down next to the remains and pretended to talk on the phone. Then Mike picked up the wrench and told the mutant that since he didn't have any money, he would have to pay compensation in crystals. Suddenly, the hero felt someone approaching from behind. Turning around, he saw a blue-haired zombie, whom he recognized as Sally. The guy noted the funny coincidence of their next meeting. The woman looked puzzled by this greeting and only growled in response. Then Mike, smiling, invited her to work with him, noting that she looked quite presentable. After that, his attention again switched to the mutant. The head of this creature turned out to be much stronger than that of the previous opponent. After digging into his brain, he extracted a yellow evolution crystal. The system reported that it was a stamina crystal, and that the chance of turning into a zombie after consuming it was 70%. Hearing this, Mike grimaced and stated that only a complete idiot would risk eating such a thing with such a high chance of contamination. Then the hero thought about what to do next. Sally looked at the crystal in his hand with undisguised desire. The protagonist pondered the differences between gray-eyed and red-eyed zombies, but soon his attention was drawn to the dirt on his new companion. Then he used the system and bought a bottle of mineral water. The guy snapped his fingers and immediately received a drink in his hand. Mike approached the girl and began to carefully clean her face of dirt, because an employee of his company is obliged to maintain a decent appearance. When he finished, the guy noticed that the girl's clothes were completely inappropriate for her new position in the company. At that moment, the system warned him that taking a girl's clothes off without permission was considered harassment. Irritated by such a remark, the hero began to argue with the system, but it pointed out that silence did not mean agreement. The protagonist was completely confused, since he sincerely believed that personally helping his subordinate choose clothes was normal. Not wanting to continue the argument, Mike smashed the window of a nearby clothing store. Once inside, the guy helped the new employee choose a suitable outfit, explaining that a large company is obliged to take care of its image. Having received new clothes and changed her hairstyle, the girl only growled again, still not understanding what was happening. Meanwhile, Mike thoughtfully admitted to himself that he had no idea what clothing sizes suited her. Unexpectedly, the system announced the unlocking of the gentleman achievement, and the hero received 5,000 in cash and half a spirit point as a reward. However, the boy's thoughts were interrupted by cries for help coming from outside. Mike remembered that there was a medical university nearby and its students might be helpful, so he offered to check it out. Then Mike pointed towards the screams. At this time, a whole horde of zombies was already rushing down the street. After this, he and his new companion headed through the ruined city towards the source of the noise. As they approached, they discovered a group of survivors being driven into a large hall by a crowd of zombies. Watching from afar, the hero noticed one important detail. One of the survivors was harmed not by a zombie, but by a human. Then Mike turned to Sally and ordered her to wait for his signal to act. He then silently approached one of the survivors from behind. Holding an axe in his hands, the boy prepared to attack. The next moment, the hero delivered a direct blow to the shoulder of the enemy, who did not even notice the approaching danger. Mike soon joined the general battle and helped the remaining survivors deal with the horde of zombies. After some time, the battle ended, and the group was left standing among the bodies of the defeated creatures. Then one of the men began to complain to the leader that he had been bitten, despite being one of the chosen ones. In response, the leader stated that he was simply getting rid of useless people in this way. But suddenly, he noticed Mike's presence. At that moment, the system activated and identified those present as genetically enhanced humans and psychopathic killers. Then Mike smiled and said that they didn't need to worry, since he too was one of the chosen ones and was sent by the ruler. Meanwhile, the leader approached him and stated that Mike did not look at all like one of the chosen ones. Without giving his interlocutor time to finish speaking, the guy suddenly delivered a powerful kick and accurately hit another member of the group. The leader shouted that Mike was a real monster and demanded to know why he had dealt with this man. In response, the hero only smiled, clutching a bloody axe in his hand, and declared that everything that had happened was just part of the ruler's plan. The purple-haired boy asked if Mike was the chosen one, since if he were, he would be considered one of them. In response, the protagonist sarcastically asked how his parents met, and wondered if it was the obstetrician who brought them together. At first, the group leader was completely confused. However, the hero had already lost his patience, so he picked up the axe and, cutting off his hand, wondered why this guy was asking so many questions. Filled with rage, the purple-haired man screamed at the top of his lungs that he was going to wipe him off the face of the earth. Then he rushed forward, intending to attack. However, suddenly he braked sharply and stopped his dash. The very next second, the guy turned around and started running in the opposite direction, and Mike asked why he was running away. Without wasting a moment, the protagonist ordered Sally to intercept the fugitive, and the girl immediately landed right in front of him. The purple-haired boy was shocked to see the zombies and realized that this man could actually command these creatures. He also soon realized that his situation had become critical, as the axe was tainted with poison. Then the zombie let out a roar and knocked the enemy off his feet with a powerful blow. At that very moment, the man's eyes began to pulsate violently. The infection quickly spread through his body and changed his eyes. Finally, he let out a painful cry, after which the transformation was complete, and the guy became a zombie. Sally looked closely at her new prey. Suddenly, a frightening smile appeared on her face. Sitting down next to the recently converted man, Mike asked his partner where their base was. Then the hero remembered one detail and offered fried sausage, mentioning the Bolshaya Coast restaurant. Without a moment's hesitation, the protagonist thrust the skewer right into the guy's face and demanded that he pay 15 yuan immediately. The unfortunate man tried to explain that he really had no money. Then Mike took the bills and declared that he had principles, and since the client had eaten the product, the service had already been rendered. At that moment, the guy thought he had managed to escape. But the next moment, the hero shoved the sausages so deep into his mouth that the skewers pierced his neck. After this, the hero, with a grim smile, asked whether the client was satisfied with the quality of service. However, the client could no longer answer him. Immediately after this, the system reported that the service industry sample achievement had been updated. The boy then began to examine the fallen items and discovered 2 machetes, a bone cleaver, and a short handmade knife. After some thought, he came to the conclusion that the loot was quite good and decided to use the weapon to equip his employees. Pleased with the result, Mike stood up and headed forward through the rubble. Then the hero calmly continued walking through the hall. However, he suddenly turned around and noticed that Sally had crouched down next to the enemy's decapitated body and was doing something with it. The girl pulled a glowing crystal out of the corpse and examined it with interest. The protagonist immediately rushed to her and demanded that she spit out the find before she swallowed the stone. They started chasing each other, and the guy was indignant that she had stopped obeying the company president, and he demanded that she stop immediately. Mike ordered her to stop again and again on behalf of the president. If she continued to behave like this, she would never get the crystals again. Finally, the footsteps died away as both decided to stop. The hero scolded his subordinate and stated that it was shameful to see how a level 15 leader could not respond with a simple confirmation of an order. However, he then admitted that what had happened at least proved the ability of zombies to evolve. After this, The story moved to the Hongxi meat restaurant. Inside, several bandits were playing cards and discussing how they would definitely get their share once Brother Wang returned. One of the men announced that the winner would have the right to be the first to have sex with the girl locked in the kitchen. Suddenly, footsteps were heard outside, and the red-haired guy ordered everyone to be quiet because someone was approaching. Without wasting any time, he ordered his accomplices to take their knives and get ready. Soon the door opened, and Mike and his zombies appeared on the threshold. The main character asked if they wanted fried sausages. The bandits just laughed, deciding that they were incredibly lucky that fresh prey had just come into their hands. After which they demanded that they give them the food. Then Mike said that he had not worked on credit and asked for payment to be made first. Irritated by such impudence, one of the men rushed forward with a knife, cursing and threatening to cut him in half if he said another word. At that moment, the hero's expression completely changed, and he asked if they were planning to eat and run away without paying. Then, with one swift movement, the boys swung the bloody cleaver. The blow hit the target and eliminated the threat in the blink of an eye. Standing in the middle of a pool of blood, Mike complained that there was no one left, after which he began to think about how to fulfill the sales plan now. He then turned to the two surviving men and stated that everything was fine as he still had 2 clients left. After this, the hero began to put pressure on them, offering fried sausages and asking what they would prefer, food or buying real estate. Terrified, the 2 men screamed desperately and agreed to buy anything. The hero's attention soon shifted to the double doors leading to the back of the restaurant. When they entered, a terrible picture opened before them. Skeletons hanging everywhere, chained. Seeing this horror, the protagonist noted with disgust that sacrificing people for the sake of becoming the chosen ones was madness. Moving further, they discovered a man hanging upside down from the ceiling, as well as a young girl lying on the floor. The system immediately determined that the man in glasses was a professor of infectious diseases and was currently unconscious. The girl tied up in the corner was identified by the system as student Jill. She was crying from fear and could not calm down. Meanwhile, outside, zombies began furiously banging on the glass windows of the restaurant. The hero then cut the rope holding the professor, and the man sank to the floor. After this, he ordered his employee to go downstairs, distribute leaflets, and eliminate anyone who refused to buy housing. The zombie let out a roar, confirming that she understood the task, and immediately began to work. Meanwhile, the main character squatted down next to the frightened student and pulled the cloth out of her mouth. Mike asked the girl if she had any money, and offered her either 2 sausages on skewers for 3 yuan, or the opportunity to buy an apartment. Jill tried to answer through her tears, but could only make incoherent sounds, unable to utter a word. The protagonist decided that the girl must have been touched by the fact that the hero saved her, and had probably already begun to fall in love with him. The guy then handed her the food and hinted that he could even feed her himself. However, the student just silently looked at the sausage, completely not understanding what was happening. She made the same strange sounds again, and then Mike finally realized that the girl was deaf and dumb, after which he apologized for his mistake. Confused by what had happened, the hero handed her the food and advised her to eat slowly, while he himself went to check on the professor's condition. He then grabbed the older man by the shoulders and began shaking him, trying to bring him to his senses. Gradually, the professor opened his eyes and let out a confused groan, coming to his senses after fainting. Mike kept trying to wake him up. Seeing the hero's bloody face, the old man suddenly screamed very loudly. The elderly man lost consciousness again from surprise. A bead of sweat appeared on Mike's face, and he wondered if he really looked that scary. The boy then looked at the survivors and decided that the people in the medical field must have had much more courage. Disappointed by this reaction, the hero sat down on the floor, hugging his knees, and began to convince himself that he was a hero who had come down from heaven for salvation. He soon came to the conclusion that the girl was crying solely from happiness, and the professor lost consciousness due to the emotions that overwhelmed him. Mike then told the survivors not to worry too much, and then introduced himself as the president of the Peace and Order Group. At that moment, he noticed Sally and praised the employee for her efficiency, noting that she had handled the distribution of leaflets very quickly. Meanwhile, Jill looked at the blood-covered creature and came to the horrified conclusion that it definitely could not be human. However, Mike calmly explained to her that there was no need to be afraid, since this zombie was just a company employee. Then the guy wanted to know the girl's name, To his surprise, the woman nevertheless introduced herself, stumbling and calling herself Jill. Then the hero was glad that she could still talk. Jill slapped the professor across the face several times to finally bring him to his senses. After some time, the man finally woke up. Without wasting any time, Mike shoved the real estate flyer right into the older man's face. The hero offered a luxury apartment for only 525,000 yuan, and also promised a permanent job as a bonus upon purchase of the property. Confused, the professor asked his student if he had been dreaming, but she confirmed that everything that had happened had been real. The hero then turned to Jill and offered her an internship, telling her that he had just decided to create a medical department in the company. After these words, a chill ran down the spines of both survivors, and they literally froze in fear of the man. However, the hero stated that after purchasing the apartment, all issues would be resolved, and then he invited them to the sales office to sign the contract. The professor tried to find an excuse and said that he had left his bank card at home. However, Mike countered that he personally only distributed leaflets and that other people handled all the sales. As the group climbed the stairs, the professor asked if the president could provide them with weapons for self-defense. In response, Mike asked why they wanted to go ahead, and whether they were by any chance spies for a competing company. Moreover, the guy accused them of trying to force him to pay for insurance even before signing employment contracts. Soon, Mike decided that everyone was ready to go and gave the order to start moving. Jill gradually began to doubt the sanity of her savior, feeling that she herself was close to insanity. To clear the way, Mike smashed the glass door of the building with several powerful blows. He immediately praised the excellent quality of the material. Concerned about the dangers outside, Jill suggested climbing out the back window. However, the hero stated that he had lived an honest and open life and had no intention of sneaking around like a rat. After this, he kicked the door frame completely and cleared the exit to the street. As soon as he got outside, the guy was confronted by a horde of zombies and announced that the restaurant was closed for the day. He then pointed the gun at the monsters and demanded that everyone receive a real estate flyer. Immediately after this, the protagonist threw a whole stack of leaflets into the air, allowing them to rain down on the undead. Without waiting for any reaction, Mike rushed forward furiously, swinging his axe. Soon, a real bloodbath began, the hero cutting down the zombies one after another with swift and precise blows. When the massacre was over, he was left standing in the middle of the battlefield, completely covered in the blood of his enemies. Seeing this, the professor and the student finally came to the conclusion that he could not possibly be an ordinary person. The group soon reached the building that housed the real estate sales office. Inside, everything was completely destroyed, with debris and rubbish scattered around. Walking calmly through the ruined hall, Mike wondered out loud if anyone had been there, but the room was completely silent. Suddenly, a system screen appeared in front of the protagonist, confirming that the real estate agent job had been successfully completed. Then, Mike washed his face in the makeshift sink, trying to recover from the nightmare he had experienced. As soon as he finished, he smiled and handed the professor the real estate purchase agreement. The man took the papers with a resigned expression on his face, but asked if this was really how the entire registration process usually went. A glowing success notification suddenly appeared above Mike, confirming the agreement had been completed. The protagonist checked the system message and realized that it was a reward for a temporary mission to distribute materials. The professor looked over the documents and found them extremely informal, but in the midst of the apocalypse, that didn't matter. The hero then put the papers away and said that he had some things to do that needed to be done, and so he would take them with him later. The professor asked whether they should go back to the restaurant or wait there, and Mike explained that he would drive them home after work. However, both survivors were full of doubts and did not understand at all what work schedules had to do with the end of the world. Mike explained that he worked part-time as a realtor, and then told them to find a corner and wait quietly. After this, the main character went to the exit and began to observe the busy street outside. Meanwhile, the noise had already attracted a large crowd of zombies, which had gathered near the building. Mike threw dozens of contracts into the air and demanded that the horde sign the documents. Then the hero began to grab the creatures by their clothes, thrust pens into their hands, and demand signatures. At that moment, the system congratulated him on the sale of 2 apartments. After this, the guy tested the effects of his new title and noticed that when using it, the friendliness of potential clients increased. He soon also earned a hidden achievement for his first title, earning him extra cash and experience points. Wanting to focus on development, Mike decided to invest 12 points into the clerk trainee class, and then the hero suddenly remembered that he had almost forgotten about his new clients. He informed the professor and student that it was time to leave, and that he was going to take them back to the restaurant. After this, the group moved along the dark streets, and along the way, Mike explained that if they needed anything, they could report it. Then the professor quietly whispered to his student that perhaps the president was actually a kind man. Soon, we are transported to another street where Mike went. Suddenly, a red-eyed zombie appeared in a dark alley. Sensing someone approaching, the creature turned its head sharply. The next moment, Mike appeared nearby, holding an axe in his hands after delivering a fatal blow to the monster's head. The guy then crouched down next to the corpse and noted that the infected in the area had a very high level. While examining the body, the hero noticed a bullet wound in the shoulder and came to the conclusion that the army had most likely already passed through these places. After this, the action moved to the entrance to a stairwell of one building. Inside the office, Mike ordered Sully to survey the area and attack any zombies he encountered. However, he soon noticed two glowing red dots in the darkness of the room. The next second, another zombie rushed forward at a rapid pace. Thanks to his quick reaction, the main character managed to raise his axe and block a powerful blow. The force of the collision was so great that the hero was thrown back and slid across the floor. His eyes widened in surprise as he realized the power of his opponent. In front of him was a zombie woman in a business suit. Noticing the badge on her chest, Mike realized that in front of him was a lawyer named Valerie. Without wasting any time, the boy counterattacked with a powerful swing of the axe. At this point, the system identified the enemy as a mutated level 5 zombie of the power type. For the hero, this explained the destructive power of her blows, but he was sure that she did not pose a serious threat to him. Meanwhile, Sally slowly approached her new opponent from behind. Mike just sighed heavily, realizing that the girl was completely absorbed in thoughts about the evolution crystals lying in his pocket. Nevertheless, the hero decided to recruit a lawyer, considering it an advantage to have undead employees willing to work for free all day long. However, when he opened the hiring panel, the man was shocked to see that the woman was expecting a salary of $80,000 a month. Although the price seemed absurd to him, Mike agreed to hire him, deciding that a good horse needed a good saddle. The system confirmed successful employment and simultaneously revealed the new employee's hidden desires. After studying the list of demands, the guy noticed that she was quite greedy, since she put forward 4 wishes at once. However, the next second, Valerie suddenly slapped Sally in the face. The zombie flew back from the blow and fell onto one of the office desks. Annoyed by what was happening, Mike rushed towards them with a gun in his hands and wondered why they couldn't just get along with each other. The hero then brandished his weapon and warned that being a company employee did not guarantee protection from punishment. However, Valerie showed incredible dexterity and stopped the axe handle with her bare hand. At that moment, a new idea occurred to Mike. After that, he bombarded the lawyer with questions, wondering whether the boss had broken the law by refusing to accept cash payments. Then an awkward silence fell between them. A smile full of cunning appeared on the hero's face. Without giving the woman a chance to respond, he continued asking increasingly bizarre legal questions. Surprisingly, it was these crazy questions that immediately increased the lawyer's sympathy level to 80 points. Soon, the indicator reached its maximum and activated a hidden reward, a charm bonus capable of charming any female creature. The hero then officially appointed the woman as head of the company's legal department. And then Valerie unexpectedly hugged him with obvious sympathy, which greatly puzzled the man. Soon, Sally joined the hug. The girl hugged her boss tightly under the influence of the charm effect. Then Mike began to wonder if this ability would also work on other infected wandering the city streets. Meanwhile, the system timer calmly counted down the remaining time of the effect. It would last another 23 hours and 50 minutes. Mike concluded that within the next 24 hours, no female zombie would be able to resist his attraction. He noted with relief that this ability only increased the undead's affection, not its desire to feast on flesh. Then the boy thought with regret that he hadn't developed such talent before the end of the world. Then he could have lived as a harem hero. Meanwhile, both zombie girls continued to look at him with loving eyes. Mike went to bed and warned the girls that they shouldn't fall in love too much. Girls were supposed to be pure and innocent. After some time, the hero opened his eyes, feeling a strange movement next to him. It turned out that Sally and Valerie were already lying in bed with him and hugging him. Unable to fight their obsessive attachment, The boy simply resigned himself to what was happening and tried to fall asleep again. However, the silence was suddenly broken by loud bangs coming from the main entrance of the building. Annoyed at being woken up, Mike sat up in bed and noted with displeasure that he had not been given a moment's peace. The hero then took the axe and sleepily headed to the lobby to find out the source of the noise. There was a lone infected behind the doors, who was furiously trying to break inside. Noticing that the intruder was a male zombie, the company president thought the whole situation was a waste of time. However, before he could do anything, Valerie stepped forward. With one crushing blow, she smashed the monster's head into the glass, spraying blood in all directions. Watching this cruelty, Mike broke out in a cold sweat and noted that he preferred to attract people with virtue. After this, the group returned inside the building, and the hero ordered the employees to go back to bed and lock the door properly. Finally, the night came to an end, and morning came to the city. Mike went to the toilet, but the zombie girls immediately followed him. Mike stood with his back to them and tried his best to ignore the presence of his overly enthusiastic employees. Eventually, the guy lost his patience and asked how long they were going to watch him use the toilet. After checking the system panel, the protagonist saw that there were still 14 hours left before the bonus expired, and sighed heavily. Then the hero came outside and told them to stop staring at him and get to work. Soon, already on the street, among a crowd of infected, Mike threw a pack of advertising leaflets into the air. The hero ordered the employees to stop attacking for a while so he could hand out promotional materials. Both subordinates instantly froze and immediately obeyed the boss's threat. To further encourage good behavior, the boy promised that after returning home, he would allow them to do whatever they wanted with him. This promise brought the girls into real delight. Mike, however, was not forgetting about sales. He shoved a flyer into the zombie's face and began advertising the opportunity to purchase real estate. The hero continued on his way, randomly scattering advertising materials around the city. Having reached the window of a store, the hero knocked on the glass and told the people inside that he had an offer for them. From inside, a small group of survivors watched the threatening silhouette of a man through the glass. The three people sitting on the floor trembled with terror, thinking that they had been discovered by a bloodthirsty madman. One of the men asked the others not to move, hoping that the stranger would soon leave. However, the only woman in the group began to feel the effects of the charm bonus, and she found the man attractive. She rose to her feet and waved her hand, thereby attracting Mike's attention. Completely ignoring the panic of her comrades, the woman opened the door and headed towards the realtor. At that moment, the system informed Mike that his supernatural charm was actively spreading throughout the area. The enchanted survivor blushed deeply when the hero looked at her. Mike said he saw bodies with gunshot wounds outside and asked if they knew anything. The man explained that 4 or 5 buses had arrived to evacuate civilians, but were overturned by mutated zombies along the way. The hero thanked the man amiably for the information, then turned around and said that he would not bother the group anymore. Back outside, Mike said they should have been more discreet. Immediately after this, the system displayed a notification about the completion of the leaflet distribution task and awarded a cash reward. The hero saw his level rise to 5, and the president's level to 2. And he also gained the ability to sense danger. The guy then opened the stats screen and confirmed receiving new development points, at which point he was enveloped in a golden glow. However, the panel soon lit up and activated a new mission. According to the task, he had to help 83 homeless people on the street. Then the hero declared that he could not calmly watch the suffering of the homeless. For this reason, he decided to get rid of them all. Without wasting any time, the boy ordered his team to move forward. Valerie instantly carried out the order and crushed the face of one infected with a crushing blow. Sally also joined the carnage and sent another monster flying with a powerful blow. From their hiding place, the survivors watched the scene with genuine horror and came to the conclusion that the man was mad. Meanwhile, Mike began to argue with the system that destroying the infected was also a way to get rid of the homeless. To his surprise, the system actually showed a decrease in the task counter. Obsessed with this discovery, the protagonist declared that he would end them all simply because he could not calmly watch their suffering. Meanwhile, Valerie cut down the monsters with incredible speed. Next to her, Sally was cutting a zombie in half with the force of her own hands. The girls cleared the area under the frantic commands of their boss. Soon, the system reported the task had been completed perfectly, rewarding the hero with points and the strange title of Pioneer of Charity. The survivors discussed what they had seen, noting that the 3 had dealt with dozens of enemies as if they were made of paper. The guy stated that these guys were clearly insane, since they were simply moving from one target to another. All this greatly frightened the survivors. Meanwhile, the hero moved towards the place where a huge overturned bus lay. When Mike and his assistants approached the wrecked vehicle, he noticed signs of a real massacre. To check the area, the hero began to knock the handle of the weapon on the metal body, creating noise. Then, with a wicked smile on his face, he swung the axe a few times, waiting for a reaction. Almost immediately, an infected soldier burst out of the rubble with a scream, breaking the remains of the window glass. Having quickly eliminated the threat, the protagonist searched the body's pockets in search of useful loot. Finding a fully loaded pistol among the deceased's equipment, he celebrated his good fortune. Looking around the overturned interior of the bus, Mike noted with regret that he did not find a single rifle, which meant that someone had already managed to take the cargo. Seeing the numerous bodies of soldiers scattered on the ground, Mike sighed heavily and decided to give these brave men a proper send-off. He took out one of his real estate flyers, lit it with a lighter, and prepared to burn the bodies. The boy then threw the burning leaf onto the corpses, which were already soaked in flammable liquid. Soon, a huge fire flared up, illuminating everything around with bright light. Mike mused that dust should return to dust, and turning to dust was far better than rotting and attacking people. After this, the hero turned to his subordinates and set a new goal, ordering them to begin the hunt for the mutant who caused the accident. Both zombie girls growled in approval. The trio soon left the scene of the fire, leaving the bus to burn out in flames. The fire continued to crackle furiously. Suddenly, the system informed the hero that a high-level medical specialist had been discovered within a 3-kilometer radius. Surprised by this news, Mike stopped and began to analyze the situation. He decided to stick to the original plan. However, Mike informed the team that if they met a new colleague along the way, they would definitely look into this issue as well. After this, the guy sighed boredly, noting to himself that the girls never answered him. He then continued walking forward, realizing that such a detour could be tiring, but he continued on his way anyway. The once quiet street was now a long field of piled-up cars and corpses. Soon a road appeared on the ground, indicating the way to the location of the new employee. The inspired hero told the girls that their new colleague was very close, so they should greet him. Then he quickened his pace, following the glowing route carefully. Soon, the end point of the route opened up before them in the form of a huge complex that resembled a hospital. A confident smile appeared on Mike's face, and he prepared for another round of hiring. However, the guys stopped abruptly at the main entrance. The appearance of the uninvited guest immediately attracted the attention of the entire horde, which roamed freely throughout the medical yard. The common infected began to growl and drool, turning towards the newcomer. A lone figure in a white coat stood out on the roof of a parked ambulance. Without wasting any time, the hero activated his ability to read characteristics and focused his gaze on the creature. The panel revealed that the elderly female doctor was a level 6 mental mutated zombie. Sensing the intrusion, the creature let out a piercing scream, warning its subordinates. Despite this squeal, Mike ordered Manager Valerie and Sally to keep up with his pace of attack. After analyzing the enemy's characteristics, the guy concluded that the old woman most likely worked in psychiatry. The spirit indicator has always remained its weakest parameter, so having such a specialist in the company could improve the business. Afterwards, Mike shouted directly at the doctor that joining his organization was not easy, but this motivational speech had no effect. Then the man decided to test his new toy and took the gun off safety. The hero pointed the gun straight at the woman's head. Then he pulled the trigger, but the mechanism only made a clicking sound. And then Mike realized that the gun had jammed in the most pathetic way at the most inopportune moment. Immediately after this, a warning appeared on the screen, accusing him of unnecessarily disturbing the zombies. However, instead of attacking, the infected looked at Mike with delight, completely falling under the influence of his magnetism. While their leader was literally losing her head with emotions, the rest of the ordinary monsters in the yard furiously rushed at Mike. The horde rushed desperately towards the entrance, wanting to tear the man apart. Mike's eyes widened in surprise when he finally realized that the bonus older woman had also fallen under the spell of his charm. Noticing a new rival for their boss's attention, Sally and Valerie stood in front of him and cast dark glances at her. Without waiting for any orders, Sally and Valerie immediately rushed forward in a fit of rage. At that moment, the zombie rushed towards the group. However, Manager Valerie deftly intercepted the monster and delivered a swift blow that severed its head from its neck. The girl mercilessly dealt with all the zombies who wanted to get close to its owner. Mike, without the slightest hesitation, fired his pistol several times. His precise shots blew the green-skinned infected's head off, causing him to collapse to the ground. The hero then continued firing, focusing on clearing the way. Soon the zombie doctor received a direct hit to her right eye, and blood sprayed in all directions. The powerful impact threw her straight onto the asphalt next to the ambulance. Mike then raised his weapon and declared that everyone present had once been a good citizen. After this, he gave the monsters 1 minute to choose between leaving and the fate of their fallen comrades. A sinister smile appeared on Mike's face, and then the guy announced that the countdown had already begun. However, he wasn't going to wait. Almost immediately, the hero skipped to the last seconds and brought his axe down on them. The blade whistled through the air and reached the neck of the nearest enemy. The blonde zombie's head instantly separated from its body and flew into the air. As Mike watched the carnage, he asked the system if these infected were considered homeless. He wondered if he could receive a charitable reward for his kindness if he sent them home. Meanwhile, the zombie doctor let out a piercing scream, moving towards the hero. However, the guy only wondered why she screamed so much, and whether she considered herself a good singer. The hero then declared that he was the true king of music in these parts, after which he sent the old woman to the next world. Almost immediately after this, the brains fell out of her head, and along with them, the precious stones. The system immediately rewarded Mike for his efforts, telling him that he was holding a spirit-type basic evolution crystal in his hands. Mike carefully examined the glowing stone in his palm, and then turned his gaze to the blood-covered employees. Irritated by his own appearance, the boy grumbled that after every battle he had to change clothes. Having decided to sort this matter out, the protagonist told the girls that he was going to take advantage of the opportunity and go on a little shopping spree. The group soon approached a luxury, premium shopping mall. Mike took a deep breath and noted that the expensive seats were indeed very different from the rest. Even the air there seemed more refined. Walking through the empty shops, the guy came to the conclusion that he could easily pick up a few souvenirs for himself. A massive gold chain caught his attention. Having assessed the decoration, the hero guessed that it was worth several 100,000 yuan. Even though the system didn't take cash into account, he still put the chain around his neck. Mike then turned his gaze to Sally and Valerie. He invited female employees to take advantage of corporate privileges. Mike put his arm around both workers' shoulders and suggested they go upstairs to wash off the dirt and work in a more presentable manner. The trio then went up to the men's and women's clothing department. The guy's eyes immediately lit up when he noticed a mannequin in an elegant raincoat jacket. Inspired by the find, the hero highly appreciated the design of the item. Without wasting any time, the man tore off his stained shirt. The new jacket fit his shoulders perfectly. To test the practicality of the new addition, Mike made a quick swing with the axe. Having made sure that the clothes did not restrict his movements and allowed him to use the weapon without difficulty, he was completely satisfied with the result. After this, the guy began to give out new sets of clothes to the two zombie women. The girls sat down right on the floor of the store, and their boss began the process of cleaning and changing clothes. With particular care, the hero began to wipe Sally's face from blood and dirt. He noted to himself that after a long, lonely life, even the blush on a zombie seemed charming to him. Mike joked that a professional stylist would charge a lot of money for such a job, but his charity knew no bounds. The hero then put a necklace on her and noted that Sally had updated her look and was now even more attractive. Having completed the first transformation, the man turned to Valerie and announced that it was now her turn. After some time, the transformation was complete, and all three put on new outfits. Settling into his chair, Mike declared that this image was ideal for a successful representative of the business elite like himself. He then spread out the multicolored crystals he had obtained in his recent battles on his palm. Mike noted that since the stones were of the beginner level, they were also intermediate, advanced, higher, and universal ones. The hero decided that he had to carefully plan every step so that the accumulated merits would eventually make him a true saint. Our story continues the next day. The group moved calmly along the bumpy road, and two employees carried several bags of supplies. Mike noted that with such fighting power, he would easily survive in any survival game. Suddenly, the protagonist's attention was drawn to a lonely figure sitting on the steps of a dark alley. It was a sad zombie that was missing both legs. With a friendly smile, Mike handed the stranger a 5 yuan bill hinting that he could buy himself something tasty. The creature's red eyes flashed brightly when it saw the money. However, instead of gratitude, the infected man furiously attacked his benefactor. Mike didn't hesitate for a second in response. The hero brought the axe down with all his might, and the blade instantly cut the monster's head in half. After this, the man warned that spoiling money was a crime and advised the creature to be more careful in the next life. After this, the group continued on through the deserted streets, and Mike soon noticed that the enemy density in the area had significantly decreased. After examining the car parked nearby, he decided that it was in excellent condition. One precise swing of the axe shattered the driver's side window. Then the guy opened the door and called his employees, promising to give them a ride. Soon the car was already racing through abandoned streets. Soon the hero left the destroyed neighborhoods and went to the elite residential areas. Admiring the surrounding mansions, Mike noted that the place looked truly impressive. Then the hero promised himself to buy a house here one day. However, at that very moment, the system panel lit up and activated the task to purchase real estate. Annoyed by yet another provocation from the system, Mike accused the interface of bias. However, after thinking for a bit, the man admitted that everyone liked having their own home and car. After some time, the car smoothly stopped in front of a huge, luxurious mansion. The boy scratched his chin thoughtfully. Surprised by the silence, he wondered if the cleaners were still going to work. Mike decided that if he rented out his cleaning department to the area for 200,000 yuan a month, income would be guaranteed. The trio then continued their walk around the area, Mike finding more and more empty houses, with not a single resident in sight. The guy carefully examined the silent facades, trying to notice at least some movement. He didn't even suspect that at that moment someone was watching him, hiding behind the curtains. Soon it was already evening, but the whole street remained silent. Looking at his phone, Mike tried to figure out whether all the neighbors had gone to work or had simultaneously ascended to heaven. It was then that his keen gaze caught something unusual at the end of the street. A strange group of people in white robes had gathered there, surrounding several wooden crosses erected right in the garden. At the center of this ceremony, a wounded man was tied to one of the poles. Mike wondered if these people were trying to gain immortality, but still admitted that it looked very sinister. To understand what was happening, the hero activated his analysis ability and focused on one of the fanatics. The scan switched to the leader of the group. His name was Evan, and he was also the president of a competing company. After reviewing his insanely long list of accomplishments, Mike joked to himself that his agency's HR department would be terrified to even read such a resume. The hero then came to the conclusion that this man belonged to that strange group. Approaching, he greeted the leader and introduced himself with a fictitious name, trying to start a conversation about old acquaintances. The hero decided not to pretend to be one of the chosen ones, so as not to accidentally make a mistake. Instead, he preferred to act openly. Evan opened his eyes and greeted the guest with a smile. Then he praised the stranger's aura and stated that he looked like a true messenger of God. Mike noted the rich vocabulary of his interlocutor and immediately realized that the leader knew perfectly well that the name he had given was not his real one. Then the hero inquired about the purpose of this whole performance with meditation and tying zombies to crosses. Evan explained that he was merely spreading the will of his master and building a bridge between people and the divine. The hero asked if such communication with higher powers included cannibalism, but Evan declared that this was heresy. Mike then asked whether this renunciation meant letting go of money, anger, and material possessions. The fanatic declared that money was only a superficial value, and that the real sacrifice lay in giving up what was most precious. Pointing to the people tied to crosses, he said that they had sacrificed their wives and children to achieve true enlightenment. Afterwards, he twirled his finger at his temple and wondered if Mike suffered from any mental problems. The hero then warned that he would kill him if he continued to promote this nonsense about the pyramid. At that moment, Mike suddenly felt that he really wanted to sleep. Raising his gun, he finally realized that the cult leader did indeed have mind control abilities. Meanwhile, Evan pointed the gun directly at Mike and declared that everything that was happening was his master's choice. Ignoring the threats, Mike immediately fired his weapon, declaring that he preferred to believe in his axe rather than false gods. The next moment, a bullet pierced Evan's shoulder. The hero admitted that he was still a poor shot and needed more practice. Evan had to put in a lot of effort to dodge the hero's shots, but in the end, another bullet hit him right in the leg. Clutching the bleeding wound, Evan furiously shouted threats and warned that the master would show no mercy. Meanwhile, The guy approached the defeated enemy and mockingly suggested that he hurry up and transform into an armored hero. The desperate fanatic raised his hands to the sky and called on his beloved to rise and protect him. Suddenly, a huge shadow covered Mike, and a giant, muscular zombie landed nearby with a terrifying roar. Surprised by such a colossal zombie, the hero stepped back and wondered if his opponent was some king of the Tang dynasty. At that moment, the system panel issued a critical warning, identifying the huge creature as a level 10 infected. The hero's face distorted in complete shock at the sight of the monstrous difference in size between him and the new obstacle. The huge monster rose to its full height, growling at the main character. Then the guy, in despair, declared that a monster of that level was a heavy tank, capable of destroying an entire city. The creature mindlessly rushed forward and raised its giant leg right next to the cult leader. Then a kick crushed one of the infected, and Evan laughed hysterically and accepted his fate to die along with the enemy. However, having fallen under the influence of the attractive aura, the giant zombie rushed towards Mike with a loving look. Stepping back, the hero took out his new axe, preparing to begin another series of deep cuts. Sally and Valerie helped him, and their claws sank into the giant's broad chest. By skillfully turning the handle, the guy gained momentum for the decisive blow. He slashed sharply at the monster's hand, cutting off all of its fingers at once. After this, the hero jumped high and brought the weapon down. The axe struck precisely on the top of the skull, splitting the creature's head. The giant zombie's body was cut in two and fell onto the asphalt in a huge pool of blood. Meanwhile, the hero joked about the illegal felling of a giant tree. Evan, lying on the ground, watched in shock as it happened and begged for an explanation of who this monster in human form was. Then Mike grabbed him by the collar and demanded answers. He promised to spare his life if he told who the gentleman was. Evan explained that he didn't know who the master was, as he just suddenly grasped the concept after the apocalypse began. He extended his hand and offered to voluntarily transfer all his assets into Lucas's name, but was immediately interrupted. Mike noted that the situation seemed absurd, since he almost allowed his employee to get the entire company for free. Then he simply handed his opponent a pen and demanded that he simply write everything down properly. The intimidated man hastily agreed and quickly began to write his signature on the paper. Soon, he finished and handed the document to the hero. Meanwhile, the hero slowly walked away, noting that he had promised not to deal with the man personally. However, the guy then clarified with a grim smile that he never said that he wouldn't let someone else do the dirty work. Without wasting a second, Sally delivered a powerful blow to Evan's chest, causing him to cough up blood. Immediately after this, the system announced that the head of the Wangxiang International Corporation had been defeated and officially declared Mike's victory. With a smug smile, he called the AI system a financial fraudster, but it immediately cooled his enthusiasm. Due to the lack of a valid written contract, as well as the strong hatred of the target, the transfer of the property failed. Mike mused that genetically enhanced humans usually turned into high-level zombies, but no one had ever seen the transformation process itself. Evan's lifeless body began to twitch noisily, and green veins appeared on his neck. Looking over his shoulder, the protagonist confirmed that the man had indeed changed shape. The newly mutated creature let out a furious roar, and the system classified it as a level 8 spiritual type monster. After hitting him with an axe, Mike told him that he had to go to the next world, since he didn't fit into the group at all. Then the guy laughed and noted with satisfaction that he had not forgotten to put on his raincoat. He then offered Evan $300,000 for the house, taking the dead man's silence as consent. Afterwards, Mike wiped his forehead and praised the true legalization of assets, and also celebrated the extension of the sanity contract. The hero came to the conclusion that his mind was still lagging behind the rest of the parameters. There really seemed to be something wrong with his head. Mike pulled the psychiatrist's assistant's business card out of his pocket and wondered if he should make an appointment. Frowning slightly and looking at the piece of paper, the guy tried to understand where he got it from and why he didn't remember who gave it to him. The hero then knelt down next to the decapitated monster and, using a wrench, began to extract something valuable from its skull. The tool sank deep into the torn flesh and soon pulled the crystal out of the infected. Holding the glowing blue stone in his hand, Mike decided to put the memory lapse behind him and not dwell on it anymore. After that, he stood up and looked around at the other fanatics. He then crouched down next to the bound survivor and poked him in the face with a stick, telling him to wake up. However, the man continued to sit with his eyes closed, and Mike thought that he was going to pretend that he had not heard anything. Irritated by such stubbornness, he gave the fanatic a resounding slap in the face. The force of the blow threw the man in the robe back, and he fell awkwardly to the ground. Lying on the asphalt with a red mark on his cheek, the guy continued to remain silent. Meanwhile, Mike looked around and wondered if they were all dead. And then the hero realized that all of this was connected with the Chosen Ones. Just the mention of it was enough to make the guy shudder. At that moment, he became almost completely convinced that he was the natural enemy of the so-called master. Along the way, the boy stated that people could believe in whatever they wanted, but he personally trusted only the sacred bodhisattva of the fire axe. The group soon reached a luxurious and brightly lit mansion that previously belonged to Evan. After appreciating the rich interior, Mike admitted that he truly knew how to enjoy life. He looked around the huge living room with its high ceilings and soft furniture with admiration, finding the atmosphere absolutely perfect. Without wasting any time, the protagonist rushed forward with outstretched arms and fell face down onto the giant bed. As his female co-workers watched, he laughed loudly and said that this was what the pinnacle of human existence looked like. The guy then opened the curtains, letting light into the room, and loudly announced that he was going to spend the night there. Stretching and yawning widely, the hero noted that he hadn't felt this comfortable in a very long time. And then he suddenly realized that the feeling of relaxation felt even more pleasant than usual. Looking down, the guy was surprised, because the charm buff should have already worn off. However, Sally and Valerie hugged him again, and then Mike decided that today he would simply force himself to share a bed with a zombie. When morning came, the system congratulated him on reaching the ideal life stage, awarding him with experience and stat points. Additionally, the interface explained that staying in a spotless home would grant random bonuses daily. Admiring this feature, Mike wondered out loud about moving the company's headquarters to this location. However, the system quickly clarified that the company was a work environment, and the home was intended for relaxation. Standing by the window, the guy stretched his back, preparing to greet the new morning and fill his body with shining sunlight. The hero then waved his hand and called Vice President Sally and Manager Valerie to begin their daily training. Running through the neighborhood with his monsters, the boy cheerfully greeted his imaginary neighbor. He joked that he had gone out for an early walk with his child, so those around him should not misunderstand his female employees. The hero asked the system whether greeting passersby was considered a full-fledged social interaction. Later, having already returned to the mansion, the guy put his hands on the floor and quickly performed several push-ups. He then rose to his feet again and pulled his arm across his chest, stretching his muscles and completing his physical workout. While relaxing on a park bench, the young man distributed 30 experience points directly to the clerk trainee class. Filled with energy, the hero noted that his psychological state had never been so good. Meanwhile, there was a horde of infected at the main entrance to the villa complex. Mike's calm expression disappeared in an instant, replaced by irritation at all the noise. Armed with an axe, the guy went outside and demanded to know why the monsters were screaming like that. In the end, he decided that it was better to leave the infected alive and use them to distribute leaflets so that they could intimidate other survivors. After this, the trio calmly moved along the deserted, destroyed highway. Suddenly, an aggressive, red-eyed zombie rushed at Mike. However, Mike simply stepped aside and dodged the attack, scolding the creature for not paying attention to pedestrians. The guy then signaled his 2 zombie employees to get ready to eliminate the threat. At that moment, a yellow school bus caught the hero's attention. Mike noted that now managing departments will not be a problem for employees. Then the guy climbed inside through the driver's door and began checking the interior. However, as it turned out, there were no keys to the bus inside, and everything around was covered in blood. And then the hero realized that the plot was starting to get twisted. Standing in the aisle of the bus, Mike ordered the zombie girls to split up and go look for the driver. However, noticing the lack of reaction from his subordinates, the guy muttered that they could at least show a little respect. Losing patience, he declared that if they continued to simply stand there, none of them would sleep in the same bed with him that night. This threat had an immediate effect. Both employees immediately rushed through the rubble, starting to search for the necessary item. Mike reflected on the countless challenges a startup faces in its early stages. Then the burden of responsibility fell on him especially heavily, and it was too difficult to manage all of this alone. Meanwhile, the search ended rather quickly. Soon, Sally discovered the infected with keys in his hands. The hero immediately activated his ability to read characteristics and analyze the target lying on the asphalt. The system confirmed that the object had already died, but at the same time displayed an impressive reliability indicator. Then the protagonist picked up a bloody axe and declared that safety should always come first. Then the heavy blade mercilessly descended and cut through the flesh, and fresh blood splashed onto the ground. After this, the guy picked up the blood-stained key. It seemed to him that the object looked more like a safe key. However, he decided that it didn't matter if he was able to discover something. Then the hero came to the conclusion that Sally was much more reliable than this flighty Valerie. A few moments later, Mike was already behind the wheel of the bus. Soon the engine roared loudly, and the yellow school bus moved along the deserted streets of the ruined city. Sitting behind the wheel, Mike said that a man who drives such a car will never allow fate to keep him in the shadows. The system then praised his incredible driving skills and activated performance rewards. A little further down the road, a lone infected person was wandering right in the middle of the roadway, blocking the way. An irritated Mike wondered out loud how this monster had dared to stand in his way of profit. Without a second's hesitation, he pressed the gas pedal all the way down, and the monster was thrown high into the air. After this, the bus continued moving, leaving the zombie's body behind. Meanwhile, we are transported to the Sidagu restaurant. There, the professor and Jill watched the street with alarm, wondering if their crazy boss would ever return. However, suddenly a yellow bus parked right at the entrance to the establishment. The shocked professor muttered incredulously that this guy had actually arrived. Then the bus door opened and Mike appeared outside, briefly greeting the team. Jill peered cautiously inside the bus, trying to figure out what was going on. However, her blood literally froze when she saw the zombies sitting calmly in their places and radiating a cold aura. Moreover, a zombie lawyer suddenly jumped out, which made her fear even stronger. Then the hero shouted at Evan, saying that in his company it was forbidden to eat people, for which he could be punished. At that moment, a notice appeared congratulating the company's president on the successful application of management theory. The professor and Jill opened their eyes wide and were literally frozen with shock, watching such an unreal picture. However, Mike calmly asked them not to be afraid and explained that he had not yet completed introductory training. The professor broke out in a cold sweat as he tried to comprehend the very idea that monsters had intelligence. Jill thought she was crazy. Now that they were working side by side with zombies, returning behind the wheel and adjusting his sunglasses, the hero told everyone to hold on tight as the ride was about to begin. At this moment, the system detected a high-level architect within a radius of 3 kilometers. The next moment, the school bus rushed forward at a rapid pace, while Will was walking in the middle of the street. He was exhausted and wounded, but he kept repeating to himself that he could not stop and should not die in this place. The roar of the engine caught the survivor's attention, and he turned his head towards the transport. Will immediately started waving his arms, asking the bus driver to stop. As a result, the hero pressed the button to open the automatic doors. A bright, saving light immediately poured out of the cabin, illuminating the exhausted Will. Mike appeared in front of the astonished architect, looking like an angel in his eyes. Mike assured the man that the vehicle in front of him was an official vehicle of the Peace and Order Company. Still blinded by the glimmer of hope, Will froze in place. The hero then gestured for him to come inside, assuring him that the company had an excellent reputation and offered to inspect everything for himself. However, as soon as Will climbed the steps of the bus, the angelic illusion instantly crumbled and 3 zombies appeared before him. Seized with horror, the man immediately tried to turn around and escape from the bus, even as the monsters approached from behind. At that very moment, a zombie rushed towards the open door, but was immediately met with a shot straight to the forehead. Mike calmly blew out the smoke rising from the barrel of the gun. After this, the hero looked coldly at the new passenger, still holding the weapon in his hand, and asked if he knew who he was. The bus continued moving again, mercilessly crushing with its wheels any creature that dared to get in its way. Meanwhile, Mike sat relaxed behind the wheel and told everyone to hold on tight. The hero then jerked the gearshift lever sharply, performing a sharp maneuver right in the middle of the highway. The bus skidded dangerously to the side and the car tore through dozens of enemies, scattering bodies in all directions. Will panicked, but the professor advised the newcomer to calm down and assured him that the president would definitely handle everything. However, Will did not believe this feigned calm. He noticed that his colleague was covered in cold sweat. Soon, the bus stopped abruptly in front of the impressive building of the Peace and Order Company. Coming down the steps, Mike loudly announced that anyone who owed him money or was blocking the entrance had to leave immediately. The zombies wandering around the square turned their decaying faces towards the voice. Then the guy fearlessly rushed straight into the crowd of hungry infected. Watching this, Will muttered that he didn't understand who had decided that only those who were illuminated by the light could be called heroes. Mike began to chop down his enemies with brutal precision, severing arms and heads in a deadly dance. The axe blade whistled through the air, leaving red marks on the sidewalk. After the battle of the massacre, the protagonist demanded that everyone leave the transport, as the interviews were starting right now. And then suddenly Martin growled quietly next to his master. Annoyed by the guy's uselessness, the hero suddenly raised his leg and delivered a powerful kick. Mike indignantly declared that this useless creature had done nothing, despite 30 monsters at the entrance. He then announced a fine of 100 yuan for attacking an employee, after which he immediately increased the pet's punishment to 1,000 yuan. Will, the professor's, and Jill's eyes widened, astonished that labor fines could be issued even to zombies. Ignoring their shock, Mike sternly ordered everyone to prepare for the interviews. Meanwhile, we find ourselves on the 4th floor of the building. Mike approached Lucas and informed him that since he was already working in HR, he was being promoted to head of HR. The hero noted that he had to begin his duties immediately. And then the hero remembered that he had read about similar strange tests for candidates at interviews on the internet. At that moment, his thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door, and Mike then allowed the candidate to enter. Will stepped into the office looking completely confused and still clutching his injured arm tightly. Mike gestured for the newcomer to sit on the wooden chair in the center of the office. Getting straight to the point, Mike seriously asked the candidate if he thought the trash on the floor would find its way to the trash can on its own. Faced with such an unusual question, the man froze in complete silence, not knowing how to react. After this, he was transferred to the next stage of selection, and the candidate headed to the door of the HR department. As it turned out, Mike literally bombarded him with questions. He asked his father's name and asked if he knew how to play bridge. In addition, he requested a detailed account of the candidate's work experience, salary expectations, and the circumstances of the injury. Will, however, wondered if it was really the apocalypse, as the company had a very strict hiring process. Noticing a zombie calmly washing the floor in the hallway, the architect came to the conclusion that Mike possessed truly outstanding abilities. Holding his wound, the boy hoped that they would be able to heal his hand if he was actually accepted into this strange team. Later in the conference room, Mike pointed to the screen and announced salaries. But for the first 3 months, the newcomer would not receive a single yuan. Will was stunned when he saw the figure of 8,000 and wondered how redirecting his entire salary to treatment could be considered an internship. Mike then stated that corporate money was to be spent solely by the corporation. The story then moved to the Evolutionary Crystal Lab, a former cafeteria that had been converted to suit new purposes. Mike raised his hand and revealed a handful of multicolored, sparkling crystals that he had prepared for the zombies. As he handed the crystals over to Chelsea, the hero reflected on how the end of the world had once again proven how deceiving appearances can be. The system then stated that the cleaning department employee had just upgraded. Pleased with the result he saw, Mike smiled and noted that the monster evolution method worked flawlessly. The boy then threw a purple crystal at Martin and ordered him to swallow the item immediately. He began to chew on the crystal, and his eyes almost immediately flashed with an eerie, bright red light. Its mutation developed rapidly. The creature's face began to distort, gradually acquiring canine features. The guard's hands transformed into massive paws with sharp claws. The system then updated his job title in the registry, assigning him the role of corporate security dog. Suddenly, a new assignment appeared, holding a team-building event dedicated to the noble cause of planting trees. An inspired Mike gathered everyone present to participate in the team event. Soon, we are transported to the streets of a destroyed city. There was a big yellow truck driving towards the company. The back of the truck contained young seedlings and flowers waiting their turn to be planted. Meanwhile, Sally slammed the office door open with a powerful blow, startling the people talking inside. Professor Lau looked at the infected girl and then asked if the president wanted everyone to go down to the 1st floor. However, Sally only growled in confusion in response. Soon the team lined up in front of the company building, and Mike announced the start of the first practical corporate event. The hero ordered everyone to take a shovel and a sapling and immediately begin landscaping the area in front of the building. Will immediately began to praise the president's boundless wisdom. Lucas and Lucy realized that he had just taken the top spot in the sycophancy competition. Without wasting any time, the employees began digging flower beds. The zombies carried heavy bags of fertilizer while the others prepared the soil. Will carefully planted the red rose in the ground. Mike, however, noted that this kind of physical labor seemed like a much more meaningful activity than going to karaoke. Lucy asked why they were planting new flowers outside when there were already decorative pots upstairs. Upon hearing this question, the guy stated that he could not reveal to the team his top secret plan to create pea shooting plants. Meanwhile, the employees began to construct the most incredible theories. They discussed seeds turning into guns. Will clutched his head and wondered if everyone around him had lost their minds, or if he was the only sane person left in the world. However, distracted by the roses, he did not notice the zombie that was sneaking up on him from behind. The red-eyed monster suddenly leaped forward, stretching out its claws and preparing to rip out the defenseless worker's throat. But before the blow reached its target, Martin rushed to Will's aid. The corporate security dog quickly rushed forward and intercepted the enemy right in the air. Then the pet roared furiously and tore the enemy's head off with its teeth, saving Will's life. Observing this, the protagonist noted that Martin had a truly outstanding natural talent for being a dog. Immediately after, the system congratulated the best gardener and emphasized that this was not just a job, but a huge environmental responsibility. The system emphasized that great results were achieved through many small efforts that accumulated over time. In the end, the team-building event was considered an absolute success, and the team received $120,000 in cash. The system then advised that splitting the company into separate factions could stimulate healthy market competition. However, the hero feared that excessive internal competition could lead to extremely destructive consequences. Mike then decided to invest a new stat point directly into the spirit stat to protect himself from psychological exhaustion. The system soon confirmed that his spiritual power had just reached 19 points. Mike then returned to the main menu and checked the unlocked device, a small, handheld generator. It was designed to convert the running of a person or any creature into a source of clean electricity. The hero immediately imagined his monsters running endlessly, ushering in a new era of sustainable energy for the company. The exchange was successfully registered, and the purchased item was temporarily sent into virtual space for 12 hours. Having decided to spend the resources accumulated during missions, the protagonist pressed the panel and immediately launched a 10-fold item draw. The rules of roulette involved huge costs, ranging from monetary amounts to extremely high point costs. 100,000 in cash instantly disappeared from the account, and the hero raised his fist to the sky, demanding from fate a super rare top-level reward. However, instead of anything outstanding, she only gave out water, instant noodles, a secretary's suit, and a toy gun. Mike's face instantly turned pale. He was indignant at such a pathetic result. Then the guy sacrificed another 10 points and hit the button with all his might, starting a new round. However, a new notification unexpectedly required a trip to the city of Modu. Meanwhile, a few blocks away from the base, someone was looking at the roof of the Peace and Order headquarters through binoculars. The survivors watched the strange scene closely. They saw Mike resting among the zombies quite calmly. The guy with the binoculars suggested that they could use their stock of instant noodles to form an alliance. However, his companion rejected this idea. The man was much more dangerous than the zombies themselves, so they needed to stay as far away from him as possible. Meanwhile, evening was falling on the city. The protagonist was sitting behind the wheel of a car when a system notification suddenly appeared in front of him. The system reported that the child channel was synchronized. The hero watched the map and noticed that his men had gone in opposite directions. He then adjusted the frames on his face and remarked that he hoped for a bright future for them. Reflected in the rearview mirror were his two loyal zombie employees, comfortably settled in the back seat. Then Mike told them that it was time to buy a luxury car. The dashboard displayed a GPS navigator that calculated the route to the car dealership. Without wasting a second, the hero pressed the gas pedal all the way down, trying to reach his destination as quickly as possible. The car sped along the destroyed streets of the city. Several infected people were wandering aimlessly near the car dealership. Nearby, in the basement of a neighboring building, a young saleswoman, Carla, from this salon was hiding on the floor, The girl had almost no food or water left in the shelter she had once rented to save money. Resigned to her fate, the girl decided to risk her life and try her luck in searching for supplies in the neighboring basement. However, some kind of massacre was already taking place outside. Grabbing the broom as a weapon, the girl heard the noise outside rapidly increasing. Trembling with terror, Carla peered out cautiously. There, I unexpectedly discovered several zombies lying on the ground in a mutilated state. Her eyes widened in shock. In the middle of the blood-soaked street stood a mysterious guy accompanied by two women. Feeling someone's gaze on him, Mike abruptly turned his head towards the basement. Deciding that a mutant was hiding inside, the hero ordered his employees to go inside and deal with the creature. Hearing this, Carla ran outside in a panic, trying to explain that she was human and used to work at the car dealership. Mike immediately raised his weapon and warned her that he shouldn't have run out so suddenly. Otherwise, he might have wasted his bullets. The woman bowed respectfully, called the stranger boss, and promised to take him into the salon in exchange for some supplies. In response, the guy threw her a bottle of water and warned that if she was lying, a very sad fate awaited her. While the girl was greedily eating a piece of bread, Mike asked what kind of car could be bought for $1 million. The saleswoman immediately stopped chewing, baffled by the idea that someone would want to buy a car during the end of the world. Irritated by her silence, the hero asked if she could recommend anything, or if she had lied to him. Then the girl listed the options to him, and upon hearing them, the main character nodded approvingly and praised her choice. Then he suddenly asked her to become friends. But Carla did not understand at all the reasons for such sudden friendliness. Mike extended his hand to her and stated that since they were partners, she had to give him a special rate for employees. The girl was surprised and said she was ready to give the car away for free, since it was the end of the world outside. But the hero asked not to round up the price, and instead just add a few accessories to the set. They soon entered an abandoned car dealership, with an imposing black sedan parked in the center of the main showroom. The guy carefully examined the car, nodded with satisfaction, and declared that the deal was done. He then approached the service counter and asked if he could pay for the purchase with a bank card. Playing into the client's madness, Carla picked up an old terminal and offered to swipe the card through the device. Mike pulled out a plastic card from the municipal hospital and demonstratively presented it as his unlimited credit card. Suddenly, the terminal beeped with a confirmation tone, and an extremely awkward silence fell between them. The girl's eyes widened in surprise. She had absolutely no idea how the device, which had been de-energized for a long time, was able to count anything. At that moment, the system announced that the purchase had been successfully completed and $1 million had been debited from the company's account. And then the hero finally lost his composure and in despair declared that all this was originally just a joke. Afterwards, he leaned against the car he had just bought, trying to catch his breath and come to terms with the colossal losses. Mike then noted that Carla's extortion skills would be a perfect fit for peace and order. The woman shook her head desperately and immediately rejected such an absurd job offer. Then Mike's expression became much darker and he approached her, assuring her that his mental health was fine. The guy eventually gave up on the idea of forced recruitment, but advised the girl to find him if she ever changed her mind. After that, he settled comfortably into the leather seat and enjoyed the feeling of being in a car worth $1 million. However, the joy was short-lived. Soon, a system notification appeared that the car had no license plates. Mike started complaining about the lack of numbers, which completely baffled Carla. The woman then forced a smile and politely asked if he had any preferences regarding the numbers on his license plate. Inside, she felt her sanity slowly leaving her. Meanwhile, the hero suggested a combination of several eights, explaining that successful bosses always needed lucky numbers. Mike ordered the dealership employee to go outside and fix the problem with the plates, then sent Valerie along with her to accompany him. The zombie immediately assumed a threatening pose and looked at Carla with distrust. The girl watched the guard's eerie gait and, stuttering, asked if this woman was one of the zombies. Then the protagonist confirmed her suspicions and demanded that she show respect, explaining that she held a senior management position. Soon, the two of them were heading out through the ruined streets. The mission's target was soon found in a completely rusted-out car that still had its rear license plate. Carla quickly ran to the car, deciding that the excuse of filling out paperwork provided the perfect opportunity to escape from the madman. However, at that moment, a zombie suddenly jumped on her. Before he could hit the girl, Valerie intercepted the attack. She then kicked the monster in the skull with devastating force. While Carla was renting rooms, Valerie protected her from zombies. Impressed by the effectiveness of such protection, the car dealership employee led her companion back with much greater relief. When she returned, the girl handed Mike the license plate and assured him that she had obtained it through a special channel. Mike examined the find carefully and noted with a satisfied smile that quality standards had been maintained. As a reward for a job well done, the hero gave her a wad of cash as a tip. After this, a new identification number was installed on the sedan, and the system announced the successful completion of the task. Mike read the notice about the car's new feature with curiosity. The system then reported that his physical stats had reached the maximum limit of 20 points. The next notification warned that the next stage of evolution required the mandatory completion of a complex advancement task. Development options included the creation of biotechnology, replacing the body with cybernetic parts, and even reaching the space level. However, Mike ignored the futuristic options and just smiled, demanding that the system give him his task. The system reported that final promotion was directly dependent on organizing a grand corporate party. Then the hero thought about it and came to the conclusion that organizing a celebration with songs and dances should not have been too difficult a task. However, a sudden shock interrupted his thoughts. He received a rescue request from the country's recently crowned Best Actress, who was trapped in a dangerous area. Mike sighed in exasperation as he had to deal with those pesky safe zone people again. However, he quickly realized that he could convince the girl to change the route right in the car and then inflate the cost of the trip. Mike complained that he had been working himself to death without thinking about his own health, all for Sally's sake. However, the zombie only tilted her head to the side and let out a displeased growl. Meanwhile, Mike was completely focused on future profits and rushed through the destroyed streets. He was ready to show that the king of the Bayanbalak Valley was returning to the stage today. As the car sped along the highway, the sky finally plunged into darkness. Meanwhile, several survivors were chatting in the courtyard and discussing rumors about a madman who decided to open a company. The man took a drag on his cigarette, saying he hated crazy entrepreneurs, believing they only attracted monsters. Then his friend asked if their master would send the group a new revelation anytime soon. His interlocutor blew out a cloud of smoke and assured him that the sacred message would certainly reach them. Then he raised his head and declared that he was the true chosen one who was destined to lead the new world. Meanwhile, we are transported to the elite area where the famous actress lived. Dozens of undead wandered aimlessly around the mansion, growling and looking for any fresh prey. The movie star sat on the floor, hugging her legs. Holding a moldy piece of bread in both hands, Anna stared into space with an expression of pure horror and hunger. The celebrity's mind transported her to luxurious memories of the times when she received prestigious awards under the spotlight. Then she remembered the day when, after her performance, her assistant praised her results. It was the day the apocalypse began, and her assistant fell victim to the zombies. The massacre she experienced caught Anna by surprise. That day completely changed her life. After biting into a piece of moldy bread, the woman burst into tears, unable to understand why civilization had collapsed so quickly. She regretted that she would never have gone on such a strict diet if she had known in advance how close the end of the world was. It was at this moment that the actress turned her head to the window, hearing a noise outside. At that moment, Anna realized that it was the sound of a machine. Running out onto the open balcony, the actress froze in amazement when she saw a car approaching her mansion. At the same moment, the horde of infected surrounding the house turned in the same direction, attracted by the bright light of the headlights and the powerful roar of the engine. Watching the monsters, Anna swore that she would rather take her own life than allow these creatures to eat her alive. Meanwhile, the sedan crashed through the iron gates of the estate and began to crush the monsters, making its way through. Anna leaned over the balcony railing and screamed for help. She promised to pay any amount that was required of her. However, the luxury car stopped right in the center of the courtyard and almost instantly found itself surrounded by the creatures. The survivor indignantly thought that the rescuers should have arrived in a sturdy pickup truck, not a passenger car. However, Mike did not show the slightest concern. Then his foot slammed down on the gas pedal, beginning an aggressive maneuver. The car went into a sideways skid with enormous force, simultaneously crushing several infected people on the concrete of the courtyard. One of the wheels literally crushed the monster's head. Soon, splashes of blood covered the immaculate body of the recently purchased car. After this, Mike got out of the car and calmly hummed a song about the light of justice illuminating the earth. Outraged by his recklessness, Anna screamed, demanding that he immediately get back into the car and leave before he died. However, Mike instead introduced himself as a taxi driver and asked for the last digits of his phone number to confirm the trip. Hearing this, the woman was completely at a loss. Then all three began to deliver precise blows, literally cutting the enemy horde into pieces. Valerie effortlessly pierced the bodies of the infected, tearing them apart with one movement. Once the area was cleared of the neutralized monsters, the driver asked the client not to be afraid, as they were bodyguards. Then he again asked for the trip confirmation code, and Anna finally dictated the required sequence of numbers. Then the guy quickly ran up the steps of the main entrance of the mansion. His axe, with wide and powerful swings, cut through the rotting bodies that blocked the path to the doors. The hero then knocked on the door and calmly informed the passenger that she could now go outside. After this, dead silence returned to the hall of the mansion. Carefully peering through a small crack in the door, Anna asked in a trembling voice what this strange man wanted from her. In response, Mike turned his head and looked at her carefully. The company's virtual evaluation system immediately appeared before his eyes, highlighting Anna's high-level artistic skills. Mike assured her that the area was completely cleared, and there was no longer any danger outside. However, Anna admitted that she was more frightened not by the zombies, but by the horror she felt towards him. Desperate to save her life, she began praising his strange singing on the street, and even advised him to take part in the show. Playing along, the young man sang a phrase about the light of justice, and then pointed his finger at her and demanded that she finish the line of the song. Having received the answer, he threw the axe over his shoulder and turned his back, showing the way back to the car. Struck by such a sharp change in mood, Anna froze in place. Mike introduced his company, Peace and Order, and assured the woman that the financial compensation and social benefits there were unrivaled. He then asked her if she would be interested in performing at the upcoming annual corporate event for a modest $10 million. Having heard such a proposal, the singer completely stopped understanding what was happening. Finally resigned, the woman followed the driver, declaring that she had completely trusted her fate to him. Confident in the flawless rescue operation, Mike once again assured her that there was not a single monster left nearby. However, almost immediately after, an unusual zombie appeared in front of them. A gray-skinned mutant with a sharp horn growing into his forehead landed on the asphalt. Noticing the danger behind him, Mike immediately ordered his employee to attack. He ordered Valerie to turn this disgusting creature into shreds. Her scarlet eyes immediately flashed with rage. The girl then pushed off the ground with incredible force, breaking windows and rising into the air. Valerie quickly closed the distance, jumping straight towards the monster. Ready to deliver a crushing blow, she jumped straight at him. In response, the horned mutant also prepared to strike with his fist. Valerie's fist cut through the air with monstrous speed and rushed straight towards the target. The main blow landed right in the chest of the giant mutant when he tried to defend himself from the crushing attack. Mike, watching what was happening, noted with surprise that he never expected to meet just one mutated zombie here. The hero adjusted the axe on his shoulder and prepared to enter the battle, while his other employee let out a ferocious roar. The boy then jumped down from the concrete structure, aiming his gun straight at the creature below. Mike swooped down with a sharp blade ready to rip through the rotting flesh of the zombie. A powerful blow severed the monster's arm, and blood sprayed in all directions. The sudden loss of a limb caused the gray-skinned creature to retreat and become vulnerable to Valerie. She immediately took advantage of the opportunity and delivered a powerful blow, cutting off the monster's second arm. Anna, who was watching this from the second floor, was dumbfounded, trying to understand what kind of incredible force this was. However, Mike did not waste any time and immediately prepared the finishing blow. Then, with one devastating swing of his axe, he chopped off the monster's head. Valerie, seeing the severed head of her enemy, immediately rushed after her prey. She tore the glowing horn from his head, which was the crystal, and prepared to devour it. However, Mike noted with displeasure that the loot should be distributed by the raid commander. The young man then tossed the shining crystal to his employee and told her to eat the old one and save the new one for later. Valerie accepted the valuable item and silently followed Mike's instructions. Soon, a system screen appeared in front of them, confirming that the creature was a mutated level 3 power-type zombie. After examining the street, the guy told Anna that it was time for her to go down, since the area had been completely cleared. The girl quickly agreed without objection, after which the driver announced that they were leaving immediately. However, suddenly his foot pressed sharply on the brake pedal, and the car stopped instantly. Anna turned her head, asking what the reason for the unexpected stop was. As it turned out, the red traffic light was still on above the intersection. A drop of sweat rolled down Anna's face. She could not believe that this madman was so law-abiding, even at the end of the world. When the signal finally changed to green, traffic was allowed to proceed. Then the trip continued as usual. Having reached the area of elite villas, the singer frightenedly pointed to a man lying in the courtyard of one of the houses. However, the hero calmly corrected her, explaining that it was only half the body of the cult leader's wife. The girl cringed in disgust at such a gloomy picture. Mike, meanwhile, decided that it was already late, so they would spend the night at his house first. Stepping out of the car with her luggage, Anna swallowed nervously, apprehensive about entering the suspicious estate. As they walked towards the entrance, Mike assigned her a room upstairs and informed her that if anything happened, she could knock on his door. Outside the mansion, several creatures were still wandering aimlessly. Meanwhile, the girl found herself alone in the room, sitting on the bed, hugging her legs with her hands and trying to find at least some comfort. A shudder ran through her entire body, and the guest herself quietly muttered that the atmosphere of this place was too frightening. Unable to bear the loneliness, Anna began wandering the corridors, complaining about how terrible it was to be alone in the middle of such a place. Clutching her pillow tightly to her chest, she went downstairs in search of some human company for the night. As Anna walked through the living room on the first floor, she felt the tension in the air make her heart beat faster. Finally, she knocked on the door and admitted that she was scared, after which she asked permission to spend the night with Mike. The hero turned his head and asked if she was sure about such a bold idea. However, not seeing any problem with this, the guy simply allowed her to enter. Finding herself in the doorway, Anna froze. She suddenly discovered that the man was lying in bed hugging two zombie girls, but the hero assured her that he was simply tired, and then offered to join them since he himself was almost falling asleep. Anna's face instantly turned red with embarrassment and shock. But in the end, she accepted this crazy offer. The story soon shifts to the next morning. Gradually, Anna's eyelids opened as the morning light touched her face. Running her hand over the wide bed, Anna discovered that the space next to it was completely empty and already cold. She tried to figure out where everyone had disappeared to since early morning, but soon her attention was drawn to the sounds of frying and the appetizing smell of food. Then the singer quickly went downstairs and headed straight to the kitchen. There, Mike announced that he had prepared a fried steak and also specified that each portion cost 25 units. Anna was outraged by the inflated price, and Mike responded sarcastically by asking if the price tag was too heavy for her wallet. It was at this point that the system panel notified that the customer's sympathy level had increased slightly, and she herself asked for 10 servings at once. However, the guy stated that the limit was 3 servings per person, and payment was required in advance. Then Anna timidly offered to open an account on credit and asked if she could work off the cost of breakfast by singing. However, Mike immediately rejected this offer. Trying to find a way out of the situation, Anna remembered that the money was no longer worth anything and offered to perform a dance in exchange for a plate of food. Hearing this, Mike suggested a way to make money quickly, but Anna warned that she was only selling her talent, not her body. Then Mike offered her to perform one song at the company's corporate event for the sum of 10 million. Anna hastily agreed to the terms. Then she decided to help with the preparation of the meat. The hero took the bags filled to the brim with groceries and headed to the parking lot, wanting to find out where the largest concentration of zombies was located. Having settled into the passenger seat, Anna pointed in the right direction. Then the main character pressed the gas pedal all the way down, and the sedan suddenly took off. Soon, the car stopped right in the middle of the street, which was completely blocked by a giant horde of zombies. The disgusting creatures did not hesitate and immediately began furiously pounding on the windshield, trying to break into the cabin. Anna almost became hysterical and asked what they were going to do with these zombies. In response, the hero reproached the girl for her lack of initiative and stated that she should have immediately set up a steak shop. Soon, a perfectly served, juicy piece of meat appeared on the plate. The hero then handed the tray to his customers and invited them to line up, as there was enough food for everyone. The next second, he forcefully opened the car door, pushing the zombie away. The guy looked at his client with satisfaction. After the monster was immobilized on the ground, Mike forcefully shoved the steak straight into its mouth. The zombie began to chew on a piece of meat while Mike continued his imposed service. After rummaging through the dead man's torn trouser pockets, the young man pulled out a wad of bills and declared that the zombie was obliged to eat everything to the end. Watching this madness, Anna froze in horror. Meanwhile, the hero asked his customers if they liked the food. He then turned to the girl, showed her the zombie wallet, and offered her a coupon for 20% off her next purchase. Mike stated that in business, it is not allowed to discriminate against clients based on race, and he was very reasonable in this regard. Hearing this, Anna swallowed nervously, deciding not to argue with this madman. Mike himself was upset at this moment, realizing that the world did not understand him at all. The next moment, the car accelerated sharply, leaving the horde of undead far behind. After that, the car sped along a deserted city street. Anna, sitting next to him, watched him furtively and involuntarily thought that she was beginning to get used to all this. Meanwhile, Mike continued to throw steaks down the street through the car window. After a while, the bag of steaks was completely empty. They sold everything they could. Then Mike said that he had prepared a bonus for the employees and suggested that Anna go and buy equipment. The girl thought to herself that this young man was very hardworking. After that, their journey continued. Getting out of the car, Mike noted that a bunch of zombies had just run off to the south. Now he became very interested in what was in the north that they had escaped from there. Suddenly, the car stopped abruptly, and a giant zombie elephant stood right in front of them, completely blocking the road. Then the guys hurried back to the car. Pointing at the monster, the girl screamed in horror that there was a zombie elephant in front of them. Then the creature came fully into view, revealing its half-rotted body and brightly glowing red eyes. And then suddenly the monster headed towards another mutant, a zombie, from whose back insect claws protruded. At that very moment, a system panel appeared in front of Mike with a new task: to destroy the mutated zombie. Mike quickly concluded that if the reward remained unknown, it must have been very valuable. Meanwhile, the monster rushed in rage straight at the mutant. The guy deftly jumped over the car, gaining speed. Then he leaped powerfully towards the monster's head. The elephant reacted instantly and tried to intercept the attack with a blow from its trunk, but it managed to dodge the deadly blow. Immediately after this, the elephant delivered a crushing kick directly to the opponent's head. The force of the collision was so great that the asphalt under the elephant's feet cracked. After the attack, the mutant landed opposite the stunned beast. The elephant became even more enraged and again rushed to attack. At this point, Mike was still watching the fight. He knew he had to intervene, so he looked out of the car window. Then the hero pulled out a pistol and prepared to shoot. However, the bullets only bounced off the creature's thick skin, causing no harm. Realizing this, Mike noted that the monster's skin was as hard as steel, and his regular ammo was completely useless. Anna screamed in panic that he was about to be trampled and that they needed to escape immediately. But the hero replied that this was exactly what he wanted. After these words, he suddenly accelerated. Mike eventually dodged the beast's attack. Then the monster rushed to pursue the car. Even during the chase, the main character did not show a drop of fear. Gradually, they increased the distance, leaving the zombie elephant far behind. At some point, the monster stopped, realizing that it could not catch up with the enemy. Mike smiled contentedly, realizing that he had managed to escape pursuit. The frightened girl became more and more nervous and wondered how Mike was able to save them. After some time, they arrived at the building of the Peace and Order Company. Mike parked the car right in front of the entrance. At the entrance, a giant zombie dog guarding the area growled furiously. Martin, seeing the stranger, immediately began to growl furiously at her. The hero approached with Anna and scolded the animal, saying that he should have been less diligent in his guard duty. Surprised, Anna asked if it really was a guard dog. At that moment, Jill ran up to them and began to thank Mike for the supplies he had delivered, and the guy calmly greeted her in return. Then Jill recognized the famous singer and was truly shocked, admitting that she was her big fan. Mike said that Anna was the guest of honor at their annual meeting, and that she might officially join their company. Lucas said that their pea shoots needed to grow up. Will was currently building a greenhouse, but they didn't have any seeds. The entire group then gathered in the company's conference room. Suddenly, Anna realized with horror that besides them, there were also zombies in the office. She didn't understand why everyone was acting so calm when there were several monsters looking at them through the glass. Then Mike explained that these were his employees. In the middle stood Liam, the manager of the sanitation department and a very good zombie. Anna was surprised by such words and asked if there really were good and bad zombies. Afterwards, Mike asked the employees to tell him what each of them had been doing for the last 2 days while he was away. Lau and Will said they wanted to build a vegetable greenhouse, but the power of the hand generator was too low, and they didn't have any medicine. Will even asked permission to go outside, but Mike said it was very dangerous there, but promised to pick up something along the way. Then Lucas decided to ask him for details about growing pea shoots. Mike replied that they could do whatever they wanted, as long as they didn't delay building the greenhouse. Anna asked what a pea shooter was, but Jill explained that it was a top secret. It was the last bastion of their post-apocalyptic line of defense, almost like in Plants vs. Zombies. Mike then thanked everyone for their hard work and announced that the company's annual meeting would be held that evening. Will, however, stated that he wanted to fence off the industrial park and asked if it would be possible to use a wire fence. He said that if they organize construction, then everything can be done even without equipment. But it will require labor. Mike asked if it would be possible to use zombies, and Will replied that in theory it was possible if they were commanded correctly. In response, Mike said that he wanted to promote him, but the day after tomorrow was payday, so he would get the promotion right after that. But Will said he was honored to simply serve the company, and he had genuine admiration for his director. In response, the hero said that he simply adored sycophants like him. Lucas was upset, because it was he who first came up with the idea of growing pea shoots. Then Anna decided to ask what she would be responsible for when she joined the company. Mike replied that she just needed to perform well at the annual meeting that evening, and after that, she would become his secretary. Mike warned her that the party's budget was not very big, but he promised to transfer $30 million to her. The singer was completely shocked and stated that the amount was absurdly high. In response, the main character said with a smile that he meant 30 million wishes for happiness and health. A bead of sweat rolled down the girl's face as she tried to comprehend it all. Sitting on the sofa with her legs crossed, Anna thought about how she seemed to have been born perfectly suited for the role of secretary. The hero then told her not to worry about anything except the party, and that the event should include at least 10 minutes of performance. Surprised by the simplicity of the request, Anna looked at the hero in confusion. She then asked if Mr. Mike was going to attend her performance. The hero replied that he might not have made it back in time, since he planned to clear 2 streets of zombies at once in the afternoon. After this, Mike changed the subject and said that he would like to hear any composition about courage. An inspired Anna clenched her fists and promised to give her best performance. After this, Mike began to think that it was the zombie employees of the first business unit who actually carried the company on their shoulders. Then the hero went outside. Walking through the hall with his assistants, he announced the start of the working day. Stopping next to the mutated dog Martin, the hero loudly ordered all zombie employees to gather immediately. In response, the undead team quickly rushed out of the building. Meanwhile, Lucas watered the soil and grumbled that the pea shoots should have sprouted by now, and he wanted the boss to notice his efforts. It was at that moment that a fair-haired man approached him. Lucas asked who the stranger was, and then immediately said that this place was the headquarters of the Peace and Order Company. Showing a bag filled with bread, the stranger introduced himself as Joshua and asked if he could join the group. In response, the employee asked him to wait a little while he finished watering, after which he was going to take him to an interview with the president. Considering everything that was happening to be complete madness, the newcomer wondered why anyone was even tending to the plants in the middle of the apocalypse. Then Lucas, with a proud smile, explained that these were extremely valuable pea shooters, designed to fight monsters. Joshua immediately concluded that this man had serious mental problems. To hide his true intentions, the stranger offered to help with flowers, but his offer was immediately rejected. After that, Lucas's gaze darkened, and he swore that he wouldn't let that idiot take all the credit. At that moment, Mike and his gang of zombies came out into the yard. Hearing them, Lucas smiled broadly and greeted the president. He then pointed to the blonde man and formally introduced the job candidate to his boss. Seeing Mike and the pack of zombies accompanying him in front of him, Joshua fell into a real panic. Meanwhile, the system scanned the target and revealed a list of Joshua's criminal professions, including cultist and murderer. And then Mike realized that the man standing in front of him had 5 classes at once, but there was not a single normal one among them. To play along, The protagonist declared that he too was a believer and was following the path of the chosen ones. With a sly smile, he asked Joshua to bring the rest of his group here. Completely confident in his own safety, the blonde launched a flare straight into the sky. A red flash exploded in the sky, marking the exact location for everyone around. Without wasting any time, Mike adjusted the collar of his coat and ordered the cleaning and sanitation department to get to work. The zombie horde rushed forward with incredible ferocity. The amazed Joshua began to beg to be made one of the chosen ones and revealed the location of all the other pastors of the cult. Having received all the necessary information, Mike pointed the gun directly at the back of the man's head and thanked him for the information he provided. The shot echoed throughout the area, and the bullet pierced Joshua's skull. Mike then turned to his faithful dog Martin and ordered him to kill 2 of Joshua's henchmen. Mike was pleased to have made 2 kills in 10 seconds, stating that this was what a true culture of efficiency looked like. The guy then announced the hiring of 2 new zombies as interns with a very attractive salary. Lucas then asked Mike where he got the gun, but he lied, saying he simply found it on the side of the road. The employee literally shook with delight at the thought that one day he too could obtain such a weapon. After this, the hero ordered the team to move forward to regain control of the entire commercial district. Soon they arrived at the fried chicken restaurant. There, Sally crushed the skull of one of the zombies with one powerful blow. At the same time, Liam was mercilessly beating another dead man. The hero then demanded that the premises be cleaned so that the company could move from a simple street stall to a real store. Suddenly, a deafening explosion raised a cloud of dust near the facade of a neighboring establishment. A huge mutant appeared in front of the president, and the guy scolded the monster for trying to cut in line. Holding an axe in his hands, he announced that he would personally take care of the customer, as he had absolutely no manners. The big guy jumped forward, but the hero promised that he was going to cut off that arm. The next moment, his axe cut through the air, after which Mike, as promised, chopped off the zombie's hand. Then he delivered the finishing blow without the slightest difficulty. A triumphant laugh escaped Mike's lips as a glowing red evolution core fell from the remains of the monster he had just killed. Mike then informed his team that this bonus would go to the one who showed the most diligence during the sector clearing. Meanwhile, a group of strangers approached the protagonist's ennobled company. Their leader ordered the others to be on guard, as he had never seen such a quiet place. One of them assumed that they had wandered straight into the monster's lair. And then they suddenly heard a strange sound. When the men looked closer, they saw that one of the zombies was carrying someone's body on a cart. At that moment, a man in a chef's costume pointed his crossbow at him and prepared to shoot. But the leader of the group immediately stopped him and ordered no one to move, while the zombie dumped the body on the ground. At that moment, the monster suddenly heard strange sounds and looked in surprise towards where the men were standing. However, not seeing anyone there, he took the cart in his hands, turned around, and walked back towards the building. The men were confused about where they had ended up. They assumed they were right in the dungeon with the boss. They also couldn't understand why the walking corpses weren't hostile to them. At that moment, they suddenly saw that someone on the other side of the pond was waving at them in greeting. The gang leader was very surprised and asked if there were really people there. As it turned out, they were met by Lucas, who introduced himself as the head of the HR department and assumed that these guys had come for an interview. However, the man said that they came from the city of Uyan. His name was Bob, and with him were his brothers Sam and Ethan. Lucas could tell right away that their names were too fake, as if they thought they could fool his eagle-eyed senses. Then he said that their chairman had gone out to clear the area, so the 3 of them needed to go upstairs and rest until he returned. However, at that moment, the men suddenly heard someone's loud scream and immediately prepared for a fight. But Lucas remained calm, only saying it was standard procedure. At this moment, the main character was hunting very close to the building. He saw another zombie without one arm and immediately chased after him. The monster ran away from him while Mike tried to catch up with it with his axe. The men were horrified when they realized that it was not a zombie that was chasing a man, but the other way around. At this moment, the protagonist finally caught up with the zombie and jumped up to deliver a crushing blow. In an instant, he brought the blade of his axe down directly into the back of the monster's head. Pulling another crystal out of his head, he noted that today was a pretty good catch. Noticing the men who had arrived, he assumed that the 3 of them had come for an interview. After scanning them, Mike realized that they were good guys. They flew straight into the office of the final boss. Bob was a car mechanic and a warrior. Sam was an archer, a cook, and a carpenter. and Ethan was an electrician. Mike noted that they were all very talented and decided to take them on as his workforce. He then said that Lucas would conduct the interview for them, and he would not interfere as he needed to show his HR skills. The man asked the chairman not to worry, saying that as long as he was there, everything would be fine with the company. After that, Mike said that they hadn't finished clearing the streets yet, so he needed to leave again. As soon as the protagonist left, Lucas asked the men to follow him upstairs. Once they joined the company, Lucas stated that Chairman Mike had a heavy burden on his shoulders, but he had a good heart. However, based on what the men had seen just a couple of minutes earlier, they had a different opinion. Lucas noted that, of course, even a saint has his limits. But overall, their company was thriving. Then the men unanimously announced that they would like to join their company. Bob stated that the vehicle they arrived in contained supplies, a diesel generator, a case of liquor, and a power plant. As soon as Lucas heard about the generator, he immediately beamed and said that it was great news. He shook Bob's hand, saying that they had done them a great service and that he would therefore immediately accept them into the company. As evening approached, it started raining heavily outside. But the party was in full swing inside the company. Anna performed on stage and said that tonight she would perform an a cappella version of the song Lonely Warrior. The main character, like everyone else, was very happy to hear the song he dreamed of. As soon as the girl performed the song, the system informed him that the breakthrough quest had been completed and the company panel had been updated. Then Anna bowed to the audience and thanked them for such pleasant company. The girl even burst into tears because she felt as if she had returned to the world before the apocalypse. Seeing this, the protagonist smiled and said that she had performed well. In response, the girl extended her hand to him and asked the chairman why he didn't sing with her too. The system immediately gave Mike a side quest, according to which he had to demonstrate his vocals. Not daring to refuse such a generous reward, the protagonist went on stage and prepared to sing a song. He turned to his subordinates and said that he dedicated this song to them. After this, he began to perform the song to general applause. Meanwhile, it was still raining heavily outside. A certain man was walking down the street, and after some time came across the building of our main character's company. When he looked up, he saw that a party was in full swing on one of the floors, and there were clearly no zombies at it. When the party ended, the hero went to his office, and Anna decided to make him tea. She asked him if he came here for work or personal reasons, but the hero asked her to be more serious, because there was an apocalypse outside. In response, the girl looked away and said, a little embarrassed, that in that case, he could punish her. However, Mike tried to remain righteous and told her that she needed to be more obedient. Still, Anna said that if there was work for her, she would do it. But Mike asked her not to dwell on it, and yet the girl insisted that the hero give her due attention. After that, she climbed on top of him and asked him to talk less and just kiss her instead. Mike realized he couldn't hold back any longer and said that Anna was playing with fire. Thus, they spent that night together. And soon morning came. Waking up, the main character looked at Anna and noted that his secretary really works very hard. Soon after, he went to work and went straight to the electrical room. There, Sam told him that all the electrical work was finished, and they were waiting for an inspection from their boss. The man showed him a weapon that was modeled after the Raven's Bite from Apex Legends and invited him to try it out. Immediately after this, Mike threw away his axe, saying that it was time for his old friend to retire. After this, he told the men that he was ready to begin the inspection. But then he suddenly heard the sound of heels. When the hero turned around, he saw Anna in one shirt, who asked where they were going since she wanted to go with them. However, the hero was extremely unhappy with the fact that she was in such a state and asked where the uniform he had given her was. However, the girl said that she was only for the office, at which point the system started a task called Trustee. She also activated the Date Arc quest, in which Mike had to take the girl shopping, to dinner, to the cinema, and to the park. The hero was very unhappy, because now it was the apocalypse, and he did not have time to deal with all this. However, he turned to Bob and said that he believed in their abilities, but since he had important business, he could not check it himself. Bob said they gratefully accepted their leader's recognition and promised to do their best. Mike decided that since the system gave him a quest, he needed to do it. And at the same time, he could look for materials outside. After that, he went to the exit with Anna, saying that he was going to take her to the store to buy her some clothes. Anna blushed a little and said that she would definitely like whatever Mike chose for her. However, before they could leave, their way was blocked by Sally and Valerie. The system informed the hero that his actions had made them jealous, and now he needed to arrange a date for the four of them. The protagonist was horrified by this system, which essentially encouraged betrayal on all three sides. However, he had no choice, so he called two girls to come with him. Soon, they all headed towards the exit together, and Mike declared that the more people there were on the date, the more fun it would be. At the same time, new employees discussed their new boss, noting that he was quite impudent. However, Will said that since his harem didn't object, then they also had no need to worry. But Bob was still puzzled, because those two girls were zombies. However, Will said that they were still women, and that was all that mattered. Meanwhile, the main character and his girlfriends were driving through the destroyed city. He noted that it was very good that there were so few people on the street, and therefore they would not have to stand in line. As he approached the mall, the system informed him that the date quest had begun. Mike walked outside with a new axe in his hand and asked the diner owner to make them 4 servings of spicy noodles. However, instead of a cook, he found a bloodthirsty zombie inside, who immediately turned his attention to him. The monster immediately rushed at the main character, intending to tear him to pieces. Without thinking twice, Mike pinned him to the ground with a blow from his new axe. He could understand that he didn't want to sell them anything, but he didn't understand why he decided to attack them. After that, he chuckled and said that this guy was just jealous of their wonderful relationship, and they could make the noodles themselves. Soon after, the 4 of them headed to the supermarket, which was still full of groceries. Mike wanted to buy some fresh vegetables, but he quickly realized that everything was already rotten. Anna, meanwhile, was looking at new frying pans that might be suitable for their shelter. At that moment, she suddenly noticed that Mike had paid for the purchase and asked him why he had done that. In response, the hero said that if he had taken everything for free, it would have been considered robbery. When everything was ready, they decided to have a candlelit dinner and made a portion of noodles for everyone. Mike noted that it was all very romantic. They had stewed chicken with mushrooms and candles. It seemed that all the girls were also very pleased with this date. He noted that the grade for the task was low, but the rewards were very good. And now he could improve his stats. Mike eventually improved his physique to 21. When he started shaking, Anna asked worriedly if he was okay. In response, Mike said that if she played Pokemon, she should know that his level had reached the maximum, and that this is how he evolved. After that, the system offered him to choose another reward, and Mike, without further ado, chose immunity to all poisons.